Welcome back, horror lovers. Tonight, we bring you a chilling compilation of true dark web stories that will keep you on the edge of your seat. So, grab your blanket and prepare yourself for in 180 minutes. Our first sinister story takes us to the deep corners of the internet. Here unsuspecting victims stumble upon a website that promises secrets of the dark arts. Little do they know what horrors await them in the shadows. We expose a disturbing website that trades in unspeakable acts of cruelty and torture. Behind the anonymity of the dark web, sick individuals satisfy their twisted desires for sadistic pleasure. Thank you for joining us on this terrifying journey through the dark web's most chilling stories. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more spine-tingling content. Stay safe out there, and never forget, evil lurks in the darkest corners. Good night, horror fans. I sat down at my computer and opened the Tor browser. I'd been reading recently about using the dark web. I didn't want to do any of that crazy stuff, nothing weird, no dead bodies or torture or weird porn or anything. I was just curious. For me, the dark web was like driving past a car crash. You don't want to see what happened, all the gory details and possible bodies. But at the same time, you have to look, you have to see. You have to know and witness, and you want to see the viscera. You need it and you hate that you need it. I was able to find some basic dark websites. I kept messing them up, typing .com instead of .onion, but I was slowly making progress. One site would lead me to another, and I wound up on a site that paired you with anonymous chat partners. I was operating under the username StevieBoy69. Yes, whine about it, but the 69 made it funny. I entered a chat room and found myself talking with someone called Gatekeeper Off Secrets. Probably some emo kid who thought they were so fucking cool. Dumbass. Hey, how's it going? I typed. Don't waste my time, Gatekeeper Off Secrets typed back. You're acting like you've never been here before. Well, I am new to this. Fuck, a newbie. I'm leaving. Wait. Please. I typed back in a panic. You here to fucking goof around or do you mean business? I'm not here to get dicked around, moron. I doubted that I actually wanted to get involved, but this guy was challenging me. I couldn't just wimp out. I mean business. Fine, he typed. What you got? Ha! What you fucking selling, shithead? I'm not selling, I typed back. Then what you buying? He asked. What you got? I got access to the realm of secrets. I can give you the address and the passcode, but you got to give me something in return. What? I really hope this wasn't some scam. Sounded like a scam. I need a secret, he typed back. I hate cream cheese, I typed. Fuck you, motherfucker. I'm out. Wait. Shit, I typed. What kind of secret? Something that fucking means something, he typed. Like what? You killed anybody? So shit just got real. I could feel the nervousness in my gut. But it's the dark web. He can't trace me. I'm safe. That's the whole point. No, of course not, I typed. Weak little asshole, he typed back. What are you, 12? Looking for some strange, and you wound up here? I'm 22, I typed back. I'm 20, but 22 sounded more mature. No one cares, he typed. You have any secrets that mean a damn, or are you some straight-edge little fuckboy who ain't done shit? I watched my neighbor undress through her window, I typed. Well now, maybe you ain't a total waste. Tell me about it. I was still in high school. My neighbor was my mom's friend, I typed. Oh good, the little kid is into granny porn, gatekeeper typed back. Fuck off, I typed. Then gasped, because I probably shouldn't be talking shit to people on the dark web. But I lucked out. Haha, he typed back. Looks like you might have a little life in you yet. Anyways, she was a total cougar. And she left her blinds pulled back in her bedroom one time. Maybe it was an accident, maybe it wasn't. She was changing into workout clothes. She took off everything. I was in my room, and I ducked down so I could look through my window without being super obvious. It was unreal. Quite the story, he typed back. Alright, Stevie Boy 69. I'm feeling generous. Go to G5JKVRQ23 and when prompted, type in 9infin33 and an E. That'll get you to the business chat. When you start talking, someone will ask you a question. You need to answer them by saying exactly this: I have secrets to buy. Then you're in. Thanks, man. I really appreciate it, I typed. Fuck off. That link will only get you to the password prompt for the next 5 minutes, so use it or lose it. Gatekeeper off secrets left the chat. What the fuck, I mumbled to myself. This was some crazy shit. It was scary, but at the same time it was so thrilling. I really enjoyed sharing that story. I hadn't been able to tell anyone else before. I could feel myself getting turned on just thinking about it. And it was anonymous, right? So I could say or be whatever I wanted. I only hesitated for a second before I typed in the address I'd been given. It took me to a super bland password entry page, and I entered the password Gatekeeper Off Secrets had given me. I was redirected to another chat room. A message told me that I was connected with Guardian Off Secrets. Why are you here? Guardian typed. I have secrets to buy, I said, copying what I needed to say from my conversation with Gatekeeper. Welcome. Be respectful. Step out of line and you will pay the consequences, he typed. Guardian disconnected from the chat. My screen flashed, and I found myself in another chat room. I was connected with someone called Secrets. What is it you seek, Steve Miller? Secrets typed. How did he know who I was? This shit was supposed to be private. Secure. Untraceable. That was the whole point of the Tor browser. I'm fucked. I know many things, Secrets typed. That is the role of a broker of knowledge. Now, what do you desire to know? What do you have to offer? I asked, stalling. How about your best friend's darkest secret? Secrets asked. Joey? What would Joey keep from me? He wouldn't keep secrets from me, I typed. Oh, but he does. And I have proof. You'll want to know. I promise, Secrets typed. What does it cost me? Nothing you can't pay. Is it agreed? I need to know the cost first, I typed. I'm not that stupid, after all. Nothing you can't pay, Secrets typed again. Either we have an agreement or I leave. I couldn't help it. Knowing there was a secret that Joey was keeping from me was driving me insane. Not knowing would eat at me. Fine, just don't steal my organs or some shit, I typed. Agreed, Secrets said. There was a pause. Is he going to tell me this secret or not? I grumbled. I reached towards the keyboard to send a message when I saw Secrets was typing again. 3 weeks ago, Joey came by your house to talk to you. You were not there. You were at work trying to save up enough money for your own place. Your parents were also gone. Your older sister was home, though. She invited him in and offered him a drink. They got to talking, and one thing led to another. Joey fucked your sister. It was her suggestion. It was his idea that they do it in your bed. No fucking way, I gasped. You've never had sex in this bedroom for fear of being caught by your parents. So who do you think the condom wrapper under your bed belongs to? I shoved away from my computer, almost tipping my chair over. I laid down on the floor next to my bed, pulled out my cell phone, and turned on the flashlight. I saw a condom wrapper. And then another. And another. There were at least 5 of them, all ripped open. I could feel my body shaking. Fuck, I said, too shocked for anything more intelligent. Slowly, I got back to my feet and sat down at my computer. How the fuck did you know? And why are there so many condoms down there? I asked Secrets. To the first question, I cannot reveal my ways. To the second, they had a lot of fun, so there were repeats. Most recently, yesterday. Last night you slept in the same sheets that your sister and best friend were in when they copulated. Shit, I said, startled and disgusted in equal measure. I was home alone, so I couldn't confront my sister. She was at the movies with her friends, and I wasn't sure if she'd be back tonight at all. Now, Secrets typed the payment. I felt shivers throughout my body. I was so tweaked out, I had forgotten about the rest of this bargain. I want another secret. Or else I'll tell your mom's friend's husband that you were touching yourself while you watched his wife undress. Oh shit. That dude was a fucking brick house. He'd destroy me. Fuck. Alright, sure, fuck, I typed. I don't know what other secrets I have. I'm super boring. Think fast. You have 2 minutes to come up with a second secret, or else I share your first one. I have no time for boring people, Secrets typed. What the fuck was I going to do? What have I done? What do I know? I'm just a regular, dumbass college dude. Fuck. Wait. What about Doug? Can the secret be something I know about someone else? I typed rapidly. Any secret that is powerful enough will do, Secrets replied. Stop the clock, I've got one for you. I typed. I am ready to hear it, he said. I know this guy, Doug. We have classes together. Used to hang out, but he's a fucking tool, so we don't anymore. I don't know why this is the case, but the assholes always seem to have absolute rockets for girlfriends, and Mel was no exception. Holy shit, so hot. Anyways, turns out Mel was having some fun on the side with a girl named Mallory. She was super sneaky about it. The only reason Doug found out is because he had installed a hidden camera in Mel's bathroom so he could fucking creep on her, and he saw them getting it on in the shower together. So Doug made copies of the tape and sold it all over campus. Posted it online behind a paywall. Made a few $100. Mel and Mallory were fucking traumatized, obviously, and they both ended up dropping out of school. I haven't heard from them since. No one else knew how the video was made, and when Mel tried to say something about it, the school called her a disgrace and refused to listen. I heard she moved to another state. Interesting, Secrets replied. I accept this as payment. Would you like a second secret? I am willing to provide up to 3, so long as the payment is acceptable in return. Fuck, I was in way too deep. I should stop. This shit was serious. But I thought of another secret I could tell, about my sister and the white powder I had seen peeking out of her makeup bag, and if I had payment at the ready, then this shouldn't be a problem. What ya got? I asked Secrets. You know Sasha, the girl you stare at in Intro to Chem? How the fuck did he know about that? Yeah, I typed. She took these but never sent them out. Below the last chat bubble, a zip folder appeared. Download it, Secrets said. Once the secret is started, it must be completed. Otherwise, there will be consequences. Death by angry husband, he didn't need to add. I downloaded the folder and extracted the files. It was a dozen image files. I clicked on the first one to open it. It was Sasha, smiling at the camera, wearing a low-cut yellow dress. Attractive, but definitely not as scandalous as I had feared. Hoped. I went to the second. Sasha was removing the dress. In the third, no more dress. By the 6th picture, she was completely naked, and by the 12th I had seen all of her, inside and out. She was stunning, and I had my own little file of photos of her for the next time I was feeling lonely and too afraid to text her. I saw a new message pop up behind the photos, and I switched back to the chat. Payment for these photos will be photos of your own. Take photos of yourself without clothes in the same positions as Sasha. You need to use props the same way as her, as well. Your sister should have toys you can borrow. Oh now, I typed. That's way too far. I have a secret that I can pay with instead. Take the photos or face the consequences, Secrets responded. Wait, look, it's a really good secret, I typed. Last chance, Secrets typed. You'll enjoy it, I imagine. The secret's about drugs and everything. I typed. Prepare for a visitor, Secrets said. Then my screen went black, and the computer turned itself off. I heard my neighbor's door slam and heavy footsteps run through our yard. Open the fucking door, Stevie. I know you're home, and I'm going to rip your face off, I heard my mom's friend's husband yell as he yanked open the front door. I am those type of people you call introverts, so I spent all day isolated in my bedroom, laying on the bed just thinking about my future. You could say I was depressed since I am very lonely, and you'd be right. Every day I would wake up in the afternoon and spend the afternoon just fiddling around on my computer. At night I would stay up till around 1 a.m. looking at my phone in bed, and most of the time have countless existential crises. It was peaceful, you could say. By the time I go to sleep I take hours to finally doze off since I have insomnia. This was the life that I lived in. A peaceful yet unhealthy life. This one night I was on my computer doing the casual stuff like watching YouTube or playing a video game. After a few hours of watching Core Extension while eating chips I got pretty bored. That's when I remembered about the Deepweb. A certain part of the internet which has illegal content, videos, photos, etc. It was at the bottom of the internet's iceberg. Since I was bored I decided to hop on the Deepweb and check it out for the first time. After minutes off digging myself into the Deepweb I was finally at the lowest point of it. I could see people being sold online, drugs, organs for sale, etc. It was disturbing to say nonetheless. After a while of clicking on countless links and stuff, I found a link that said, clickme.exe. I am very gullible, so I clicked on the link. It sent me to a video chat stream. There were about a couple of hundred people watching the live stream. The video showed a dark room which looked like a basement. It was unnerving. I couldn't take my eyes off it, so I kept watching the video. Then after a few minutes, someone turned the camera sideways and my heart dropped. The camera showed a girl who looked to be in her 20s. She was tied up to a chair with ropes all over her body, and I could hear her screams being muffled by duct tape over her mouth. My chest tightened. The whole chat box was rushing with messages. Everyone was saying, "Kill her," in the chat. My heart started pounding. This was a murder stream. Then, the person behind the camera stepped out into shot. He wore a black hoodie with a ski mask which kept him anonymous. The man then gestured a thumbs up and reached into his pocket and took out a large switchblade. My eyes widened as the man held the blade up against the girl's neck. I knew what was going to happen since the chat was spamming, "Kill her," and slit her throat. The man in one swift motion slit the woman's throat as blood gushed out. I was hyperventilating in fear. The video then started glitching and buffering until it finally stopped. I immediately closed the tab and exited the web browser. My hands were shaking in fear. I was heavily disturbed by what I saw. The following night I tried to doze off but couldn't. My mind was replaying the same images of that woman's throat getting slit. You think this is where the story ends, but you'd be wrong. I just left my house to get groceries since I was running out of food in my fridge. While I was strolling with my shopping cart in the cereal aisle, I remember getting hit in the head with a hard object. My vision slowly started blacking out until I passed out. I woke up in a basement with water dripping in my head. I gazed around to see countless dead, lifeless bodies on the floor in their pools of blood. Their bodies were mutated and their bones were broken and dislocated. My heart sank into my stomach. There was also dozens of weapons hung on the walls with large nails. The weapons were covered in blood. I tried to scream and move but couldn't since I was tied to a chair with ropes and my mouth was covered in duct tape. I tried to frantically escape by knocking down the chair, but to no avail. Then I saw the basement door open and saw the silhouette of a man walking down the stairs. My heart started racing in fear. The man walked to me and took out his phone and placed it on the table in front of me. That's when I realized what was about to happen. The man then started to start a live stream on his phone and I could see countless people joining. I was about to get killed on stream just like how that woman did on the Deepweb. Tears started to pour down my cheeks. The man wore the same clothes as he did in the live stream of the woman's death. The man then spoke to the viewers on the live stream. "How should I kill him?" he said with a deep and cracky voice. After a few seconds the man then said, "Torture him? Pretty good choice, but first I will cause him pain." The man then started walking towards the large sledgehammer that was hung up on the wall. He took it and walked back to me. I knew he was going to hit me with it, so I braced for impact. The man swung the sledgehammer to my stomach with brute force. It was so painful. I could barely breathe after he had done that. He then kept hitting me with the sledgehammer repeatedly until I was knocked out. I recall waking up in what looked like a cell that had no windows and only one eerie yellow light on the ceiling. I woke up, groaning in pain from the bruises and cuts from the sledgehammer. I was wearing what looked like hospital patient clothes that reeked the smell of blood. The clothes were old and was stained. I then heard footsteps coming towards me. It was that man again. "Let me the hell out," I screamed at him. It was silence. The man kept staring at me. Then he took off his hood and his ski mask, and I could finally see his face. He looked like he was in his mid-20s. He was bald and had cuts and bruises on his face. He even had an unsettling grin that spread from cheek to cheek. It sent shivers down my spine. "Listen, Daniel, I ain't gonna let you out anytime soon," he said. My heart skipped a beat. How did this guy know my name? I thought. How the hell how do you can know me name? I said as I stammered on my words in shock. Well, as they say, a magician never tells his secrets. He let out a cackle. "Who the hell are you?" I said, grasping onto the steel bars. "I'm Devin. Nice to meet ya." "Get me out of here, you freak." "Daniel, the more you speak to me with that attitude, the more I'm gonna have to hurt you." "You're a sicko." "Well, here's your dinner," Devin said. I saw he was holding a plate. He crouched down and slid the plate under the bars and into my cell. There was a dead rat with its head decapitated on the plate, blood everywhere on the plate. I gagged at the sight. "Eat up," Devin said. I covered my mouth to prevent myself from vomiting. "Bro, I'm going to shove it down your throat," Devin said. He opened the cell and walked in. Devin took the rat's head and threatened to shove it down my throat. I backed up to the back of the cell. "Hold still," Devin said. He then caught a grab of my throat and was choking me. He then shoved the rat into my mouth, and I felt the organs and hairs of the rat getting caught in my throat. I gagged and vomited all over Devin. "You prick," Devin said. He let go of my neck and punched my face. I almost got knocked out. "Breakfast is tomorrow, Daniel." Devin walked out the cell with the plate in his hand. I fell to the floor in pain and had blood trickling down my nose. From that day on, I was being fed live animals, dead animals, bugs, fish, etc. I was also tortured every day in different ways. From sledgehammers to chainsaws to my arms. It felt like hell every day. Then, after what seemed like years and years of torture, a miracle happened. The cops showed up. Devin was arrested. He was already on the wanted list for the past 6 years. I was gone missing for only 2 months, which had felt like years. I was immediately escorted to a hospital since half of my joints were gone or broken. I am 35 now and I have a child. This experience has traumatized me to the core, and every time I see an animal I always remember being fed raw animals. It's been 10 years and I still remember this to this day. I have been taking medication and therapy to forget about this, but I don't really think it's working. And needless to say, I will never ever go on the deep web ever again. Last year I did something really bad. I got onto the dark web with a few friends, and I'm telling you, it is real. There's a certain site, and I'm not giving the full name. Let's just call it the Black Room. Me and my friends waited until their parents went to bed, and all 3 of us pulled up chairs to the computer. It was a live streaming site that read, which translates to live preview in Serbian. There was a black screen and people were typing into the chat box in another language. We just watched and waited for something to happen. A topless woman with long dark brown hair appeared in a chair. She was wearing blue jeans. Her hands were tied with what looked to be thin blue ropes and duct tape double wrapped. I guess it was to make sure she didn't get out. Her feet were cuffed together with what looked like metal leg cuffs. She had a blank look on her face. The camera flashed off to dark again. It looked like someone was covering the camera with a towel. Then I heard the sick sound of a drill being turned on. The towel was removed. I heard her shouting in another language, probably begging for her life. Screaming and crying, but she could not move. There was a shirtless man in a BDSM mask. If you don't know what that is, I suggest you look it up. It was a black leather-looking mask with eye holes and a zipper where you could zip up your mouth. She began screaming and I wanted to turn away, but curiosity got the best of me. He put the fat metal tip of the drill straight into her damn eye. It made a sickening squishing sound and she was moaning and screaming as the drill went directly through her eyeball. Dark red blood began oozing out and it looked like the poor woman was going into shock. She was shaking so bad. The camera had zoomed in. Her eye was still attached and had major blunt force trauma. It looked like a big black bloody hole. Her eye was half there somewhat. It was really hard to look at. Then the camera lens went black again. We heard two loud pops that sounded like a gun. It was silent. No more sound, no more video. The viewing was obviously over. Oh my God, I told my friends, I just think we witnessed a murder. They shot her, they really F% King shot her. My friends and I agreed we would never watch anything like this again. I went home feeling disgusted with myself. I hoped and prayed it was not real. Sadly, it may have been. I promised myself no more. I would never watch anything like that again. That lasted till about the next weekend. Next Saturday night, after playing the PS4 for a few hours, we began to get tired and smoked a few joints to wake us up. Then my best friend, we will call him Rob, suggested we get on the dark web again. Rob is a computer genius and knows how to get deep into the dark web. He used a VPN. We decided to click on the black room again. Rob told me that only 4% of the internet is visible to the public and 96% of the remaining is made up of the deep web. That made me feel a bit sick to my stomach. What a disturbing thought. It took a few hours and the site wanted us to pay with Bitcoin and we did. I don't know how we easily got in the first time without paying. I guess we just got lucky because they wanted us to pay next time. This time the screen was not black and there was a concrete-looking room and a bucket. A big heavy-set man had this white pillowcase around his head with holes cut out for his eyes and mouth. You could not see his face. He picked up the bucket and began laughing, showing us the bucket and then showing what was in the bucket. I almost threw up. It was a bucket full of body parts. Human body parts floating in this clotted red goop. I was assuming it was coagulated blood. I just remember seeing bloody teeth, a few fingers and what looked like a couple of eyeballs or what was left of them. This couldn't be real, I thought, but by the way the man was laughing, it was no joke. It had to be animal parts, one thought. Please let it be animal parts. The camera zoomed in and on the bucket was a white piece of paper that read victim number 12. It was written in permanent marker. Was this the remains of some poor unfortunate soul who got brutalized like the first victim? Was this the remains of the poor lady we saw last week? Ugh, I had really hoped not. I wasn't prepared for what happened next. The screen went black again and in a chair sat another woman, this time with blonde hair and her eyes were covered with a black scarf. She was bounded by her hands and feet with the same looking thin blue rope and I felt very sorry for her. Her waist was strapped in with some sort of belt holding her down onto the chair. A white sheet was hung up behind her. I wanted to help her and felt like there was nothing I could do. The fat man began dipping his hands in the gooey mess and trying to shove it in the woman's mouth. She tried to hold her mouth shut, but the man got angrier and slapped her in the face. It sounded like he was telling her eat it, eat it. She began to chew and cry and then vomited the whole mess up on her pretty white silk blouse. The chat box was going wild. People were typing in different languages and the chat box was going wild. Then I heard it. The cranking of a chainsaw. There, standing beside the poor girl, appeared the same man from the first video. He was holding a chainsaw, shirtless, black mask and all. I got a sickening feeling in my stomach. This is not going to be good. I had seen what chainsaws do to people. Chainsaw accidents are horrible. I wanted to stop viewing right then and there, but my friends were eager to watch and I didn't want to seem like a wuss. She was screaming her guts out, flailing, trying to get out of the chair. Good thing we all had our headphones on because this was really loud. I watched in horror as he began to try and cut off her arm. The chainsaw went through a little and then kicked back in a jerky upward motion, coming close to knocking her attacker out. He must have hit her arm bone, I thought. I think this really angered him. I could hear him screaming in another language, so I assumed he might have got nicked by the chainsaw. Suddenly he shoved the blade directly into her stomach area. He pushed in and began to cut vertically upwards, her faint screams muffled by the chainsaw. Droplets of blood began spraying into the air onto the sheet. Little pieces of meat and tissue flew all over the room. She began convulsing, her eyes rolled to the back of her head, and she was gone. Just like that. The man slowly pulled the chainsaw out, and as he did I could see what looked like her intestines hanging out. The screen went black. I ran to the bathroom to throw up. I think I threw up for 15 minutes. I almost passed out. My friends laughed at me, and I knew behind the laughter it disturbed them too. All I know now is there are some really sick people out in there in different parts of the world that will do anything on the web for money. These people have no heart or soul. They are inhumane and sick in the head. So stay off the dark web. There are just some things you can never forget that will disturb in your mind forever. You will not be able to undo what you have seen. Remember that. In the summer of 1976, I said goodbye to my mom, who never took her eyes off the magazine she was reading. She simply gave a curt wave that said, "You don't have to be home by dinner, but be safe and have fun." Then I walked out the front door and hopped into the passenger seat of the red Challenger that belonged to my best friend Jonathan Belvedere. 10 minutes later, Jonathan parked his Challenger outside the home of Rachel Lafferty, our other good friend, and seconds later Rachel was getting into the back seat, a huge grin on her face. But there was a hint of sadness in that grin. Like a rose that was starting to wilt just slightly. Then turning to both Rachel and I, Jonathan perfectly summed up why that sad smile was there. "Well, boys and girl, it's the final summer," Jonathan said sagely. "One last hurrah for the Three Musketeers." "Don't say that," Rachel said, and now she really did look sad. "It's not the end. It's a new beginning," I added, giving them both a weak smile. "Sure," Jonathan said, winking at us both and putting the Challenger in drive. "To new beginnings." And then his Challenger sped off down the road on that bright summer day, loud and powerful, no doubt giving some of Rachel's neighbors alarm. In fact, one of Rachel's neighbors, who was mowing his lawn, shouted at us to slow down as we flew by. Everyone in town knew Jonathan's car. It was instantly recognizable due to the yellow smiley face he had painted on the driver door. We had all just graduated high school, and this was the last summer before we each went our separate ways. Rachel would be attending the University of Madison in the fall. I would be attending the less prestigious technical college, but my parents were still proud that I was going to college anyways. Jonathan wasn't attending college at all. He was going to move to Milwaukee to work at an auto shop his uncle owned. None of us would ever end up doing those things. But as Jonathan's Challenger bore us out of the suburbs like a bat out of hell, we didn't know that. We knew that the times were changing, to be sure, and that the Three Musketeers were splitting up. But there must still be good times ahead, right? And on that bright summer day it was easy to believe that. Easy to believe in new beginnings. We lived in Dutchville, Wisconsin. If you were to visit Dutchville today, you'd find a thriving town that has all the hustle and bustle that comes along with strip malls and movie theaters that bring food right over to your seat. And there are apartment complexes everywhere. But back in the 70s, I'm not sure you could even quite call Dutchville a town. More of a hodgepodge of small suburbs, one school, and one downtown area. And when you left all that behind, there was nothing but farms, fields, and roads. So many roads. An intricate web of roads that sprawled all across the county. It was through that web of roads that we drove, blasting music in Jonathan's car and laughing. The plan was simple. We would drive around for a bit, then find a spot to hang. But for how long did we drive? 20 minutes? 30? 45? An hour? I honestly couldn't say. Time seemed to move strange that day. I can only say that after an indeterminate amount of time, Jonathan slowed his car down. To our right was an old-looking gravel road. There was a frail-looking wooden street sign at its beginning. Written over the wood in crude black letters were the words, Sparrow Road. Sparrow Road? Jonathan said, bemused. I don't think I've ever been down this road before. Me neither, I said. Which was strange considering that ever since Jonathan got his license a few years back, we had spent countless weekends driving around our small town. To discover a new road wasn't just bizarre, it was plain eerie. But Jonathan, who now had a look in his eyes that was not unlike some great explorer who had just discovered a hidden Aztec city, turned the steering wheel and the car lurched over the gravel road. The gravel made a terrible crunching noise underneath the tires. Maybe we shouldn't, Rachel said from the back seat. I got a funny feeling about this. Rachel's funny feelings were not to be taken lightly. Once in 8th grade, we had discovered a fairly big tree in the woods outside of town. The kind of tree that was perfect for climbing. Jonathan and I began climbing the tree, but Rachel said that we shouldn't. That she just had a funny feeling, was all. She got really scared, and so Jonathan and I stopped climbing and left the woods with her. Not 30 minutes later, a surprise storm came over the town. When we went into the woods the next day, the tree we had been climbing had been struck down by lightning. The tree, which had seemed so large and ancient the day before, had now been reduced to blackened wood. And had we not listened to Rachel that day, Jonathan and I might have burned along with it. There were other moments since then. Smaller moments, but moments where Rachel's funny feeling came in handy. Maybe Rachel's right, I said. It's fine, Padre, Jonathan said, choosing to ignore Rachel's warning. He occasionally liked to call me Padre because one time in 7th grade I jokingly said I wanted to become a priest. The car began to pick up speed. What better way to spend the final summer than explore some strange roads, eh? We'll just cruise for a little bit, and then find a place to hang. Rachel said nothing. But when I turned to look at her, she had a worried look on her face. I don't know how long we cruised down that terrible gravel road. I only know that the sound of the gravel crunching underneath Challenger's tires seemed to grow louder and louder the more we went along. And Sparrow Road seemed to stretch on for an eternity. At one point, we came across an abandoned car. Looks old, Rachel said as we passed it. That was an understatement. The car looked ancient. Like something from the early 1900s. Groovy, Jonathan said. He whistled and kept driving. But eventually Jonathan did bring the car to a stop. On our right was nothing but a field of green grass. On our left was the same, except jutting out of the grass, just a few feet from the road, was a stone well. "This looks like a good spot as any," Jonathan said, turning off the car. We gathered up our goods, that is the beer Jonathan had stored in the car, and got out. The stone well had a small roof over it, and just a little bit below the roof was a bar looped with rope. On the bar's right end was a wheel crank that when turned would ease the rope down into the well. Sitting on top of the well's roof was a big black crow. It cawed as we approached. Jonathan shot it, but it only flew a feet away, and regarded us reproachfully with its head cocked to the side. The three of us looked down into the well. The mouth of the well was wide. Very, very wide. I'll never forget the shivers that went up my back as we looked into it. You couldn't see the bottom of the well. The stone wall seemed to go down for a few feet, and then there was nothing but blackness stretching into infinity. No sign of any water either. No plausible way to tell how deep it went, not with your eyes at least. And there was something terrible about that darkness. You stared down into the well, and the well seemed to stare back. "Hello!" Jonathan yelled into the darkness, and his voice echoed. "Hello! Hello! Hello!" And then faded. "Trippy stuff," Jonathan said, grinning. "Creepy," Rachel said. "You can't see the bottom." It's just a trick of the light," Jonathan said. Then turning away from the well, he took 3 beers out of his bag and handed one to both Rachel and I. We toasted. And we drank. "What road were we on?" Rachel said sometime later. "Ha!" Jonathan replied. He was sitting on the lip of the well, smoking a cigarette. Rachel and I were sitting in the grass. There were crumpled beer cans all around us. Before we came onto Sparrow Road. "What road were we on?" "Oh," Jonathan said. The end of his cigarette was beginning to droop lamely, and he ashed it into the well. "I don't remember." "Do you remember?" Rachel said, looking at me. I shook my head. I tried to think, but I honestly couldn't remember. "Neither can I," Rachel continued. And now she sounded as worried as she looked. "I don't know where we are right now. I don't like being here." "We're on Sparrow Road," Jonathan said flatly. "But where is Sparrow Road?" Rachel responded. "Jesus, Rachel," Jonathan said, spreading his hands out. "It's somewhere in Dutchville County, obviously." "Maybe Rachel's right," I said. "Maybe we should head back. Remember the tree dash." "Don't give me the tree thing again," Jonathan said. And he threw his entire cigarette into the well. "I know you guys must think you're so much smarter than me, because you got into college and all dash." "Jonathan, that's not at all dash," Rachel tried to say, but was cut off. "But I'm not as dumb as you might think," Rachel Lafferty. "And if I am, then who better to recognize dumb luck than a dummy himself? Because that tree thing? That was pure dumb luck. And you've been holding that over our heads for too fucking long. And I do remember what road we were on. We were on Mulberry. And then we turned onto Sparrow Road." But he didn't sound as if he believed it. And the 3 of us had driven down Mulberry Road multiple times. There had never been a gravel road that went off Mulberry. A terrible silence overtook the 3 of us. It was broken when Jonathan began laughing. "I'm sorry, guys," Jonathan said. "I'm being a grade A asshole right now." "Kinda have been the whole drive," Rachel said. "But not unkindly." And she was smiling. "Some start for the final summer, huh?" Jonathan said, meeting her smile. And then the three of us started laughing. It was the last good laugh I remember having. Then after our laughter subsided, Jonathan said, "You're right though. This place is creepy. Let's head back." "Really?" Rachel said. "Really," Jonathan replied. "Memories are a funny thing. I've played back what happens next in my head multiple times. Played it over and over again. Sometimes that stupid crow is back on the roof of the well, and when it calls it surprises Jonathan. Other times the crow isn't there at all. But regardless of the variations in my memory, the result is always the same. Rachel and I stand up in the grass. And as Jonathan gets up from the lip of the stone well, he loses his balance. His hand slips as he tries to grab the well. He falls backwards. He falls into the well. Jonathan didn't scream as he fell backwards. He simply made a short gasping noise. The back of his head hit the rope bar, and then he fell down into the gaping maw of the well. Rachel and I immediately rushed to the well and looked down. There was no sign of Jonathan. There was one horrible moment where Rachel and I didn't say anything. I think because morbidly, we were both waiting for the sound of him hitting the bottom of the well. But no sound ever came. And then Rachel and I began screaming. We began screaming Jonathan's name, begging him to answer us. But there was no reply. Only darkness stared up at us. "We need to get help," I said. And then a sick realization came over me. Oh Jesus, Rachel, Jonathan had the keys. I stared over at Jonathan's Challenger. The yellow smiley face on the driver door seemed to stare back at me mockingly. "I'll run," I said. "I'll run as fast as I can to town and I'll get help." I was already beginning to move. "Wait," Rachel said. "Just wait." She walked over to the wheel crank and began to turn it. Rope began to pull down. "What are you doing?" I asked, mortified as Rachel began to tie the rope around her waist. "Do you remember my cousin Anton?" Rachel asked. Vaguely," I said. "Look, Rachel dash. I went to visit Anton a couple of summers ago. My uncle has a farm and they have a ground well just like this on their land. Anton, he's a couple years younger than us, and he's not that bright. He fell into the well. I was the one that found him, because I heard him screaming. My uncle told my aunt to go get help. But do you know what my uncle did? He went down into the well. He stayed down there with Anton for hours. Later that night he told me that getting a person out of a well isn't the tricky part. It's making sure they're still alive when you bring them up that's hard. Do you understand? Bringing Anton up wasn't the priority. Stopping the bleeding was. Jonathan is down there. And he's probably bleeding. We can't just leave him down there. And I think we're far. Very, very far from Dutchville. Or from anyone. It'll take a long time to run and get help. If we both run, then there might not be a Jonathan to bring up by the time we get back with help. So before you leave, you're going to lower me down that well, and I'm going help Jonathan, because he's probably unconscious down there and he's probably bleeding." "Jesus Christ, Rachel, you want to go down there?" "It's not that deep," Rachel said, staring down the well. She sounded as if she was talking more to herself than to me. "It's just a trick of the light. Wells are never that deep. The one Anton fell into wasn't that deep." Rachel didn't mention that she had probably been able to see Anton at the bottom of the well he had fallen into. There was no seeing the bottom of this well. Someone has to stop the bleeding. Rachel had swung both her legs over the well, and was now dangling over the darkness. In some ways she looked like bait that was about to be swallowed up by a great white shark. Or in this case a great stone worm. "Are you sure about this?" I asked nervously. Rachel nodded. "The moment I reach the bottom, you run and get help." I put both hands on the crank wheel and began to turn. Rachel began to lower into the well. After a moment her feet dipped into the darkness. For some odd reason I expected her to make some kind of noise, like a person makes when they first step into a cold pool, but Rachel said nothing. A moment later her legs were swallowed by the darkness. Then her torso. Rachel stared up at me with those bright blue eyes of hers. And then those two went into the darkness. Just a trick of the light. I stopped the crank for a moment and yelled down the well, "Rachel, are you okay?" Not being able to see her made me so frightened. I immediately regretted lowering her down and was about to bring the rope up. "I'm okay," Rachel responded. But her voice sounded so far away. As if she was at the end of a very long tunnel. Which didn't seem right at all, considering I had only lowered her a few feet into the well. "Keep going." I continued to turn the crank. Deeper and deeper Rachel went into the well. Though I couldn't see it. I could only watch as the rope pulled down from the bar. "I still haven't reached the bottom yet," Rachel called up. At least this is what I thought I heard. It was incredibly hard to hear her now. She sounded so far. "Wait, hold on, there's Dash." "Rachel?" I yelled down the well. "What is it?" There came no reply except for my own echo. It. Rachel? Rachel. 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 Rachel, if you don't respond, I'm bringing you back up. 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 Not being able to stand Rachel's silence and the horrible sound of my own echo, I immediately began to reverse steer the crank and pull the rope up. The moment I did, I could tell something was wrong. The rope felt much lighter than it should have. I turned the wheel like a madman. I could already feel my fingers starting to blister. And then the end of the rope receded out of the darkness and into the light of the day. It was no longer tied around Rachel. It was not tied around anything. And Rachel was nowhere to be seen. I stared numbly at the end of the rope, which now looked frayed, as if it had been cut or chewed by something. I looked down the well and that terrible empty darkness stared back. At some point Rachel had become untied and fell further into the well. But like Jonathan, there came no sound of her hitting the bottom. If there even was a bottom. I screamed down the well. I screamed for both Rachel and Jonathan. But again I was only met with the sound of my own echo. For one insane moment, I thought of lowering the length of the entire rope into the well and then climbing down it like some kind of firefighter. But the thought disappeared as I stared down into the darkness. It was replaced by another thought. I could feel a strange pulling sensation in the back of my head. And as I stared down the well, it was almost as if the darkness was slowly rising to meet me. "Just fall in," the thought in the back of my head said. It spoke in a clear voice. Almost too clear to be only a thought. Just fall in and ride the endless well. Jonathan and Rachel are down here. They're falling. They'll always be falling. Higher and higher the darkness climbed. I continued to stare down at it, as if in a trance. I could feel myself leaning over the lip of the well. Leaning further and further in. Just fall. 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 I was so close to falling in when I heard the sound of a crow cawing. It broke the trance. I immediately became aware of how far I was leaning over the well and backed away. The crow, and it was undoubtedly the same crow we saw when we first came to the well, continued to caw. It sounded like laughter. Malicious laughter. That was enough. I ran away screaming. I ran for what felt like an endless amount of time. At some point, though, I did reach the end of the gravel road. I continued to run, searching for help, screaming for it. Nothing around me looked familiar at all. And there wasn't a soul in sight. The roads were completely empty. I think we're far, very, very far from Dutchville. Or from anyone. We had left my home at around 9:45 a.m. It had been a bright, beautiful summer day. When I finally stumbled across the diner, it was pitch black outside. When I first saw the diner, I wasn't sure if it was real. I had the same feeling that a man who had been roaming the desert might feel when suddenly coming across a beautiful oasis. Was it some terrible trick? A cruel mirage? I had been running around empty roads for who knows how long, and now suddenly here was a bit of civilization. The diner had a bright red neon sign on top of it that read, "Shelly's Diner." It hurt my eyes. But I could smell coffee coming from inside, and that was a good smell. As I shuffled to the diner's entrance, I noticed a handful of cars in the parking lot. They each had Kansas license plates. I walked through the diner's front door like a corpse. "I'll be with you in 1 second, sweetheart dash," the waitress was saying, and then she stopped when she saw me stumble through the door. I imagine I looked like a corpse as well. "Please help us," I said. My voice felt weak. Tears were streaking down my cheeks. There was only a handful of patrons in the diner, and they all turned to look at me. "My friends need help. God, please help us." I was in Short Falls, Kansas. That is what the waitress told me when I asked her where I was. I had been in Dutchville, Wisconsin in the morning, and now I was in a small county that was at least 12 hours away. Impossible, of course. There was no way we had driven that far or in that direction. There was no way any of this could be real. But the diner was real. The coffee the waitress had given me was real too. And so were those license plates outside. I told my story to the patrons, and they listened with rapt attention. When I finished, a small murmur broke out in the diner. I could tell by the look in their eyes that none of them believed me. They regarded me the same way one might regard a sick dog. "Son, I've lived here my whole life," an older man said. "And I've never once seen any Sparrow Road." Another murmur, this one of agreement, broke out in the diner. "I don't care if you believe me. Please, just help my friends." There had been a search. The waitress had called the Short Falls Sheriff Department, and they listened to my story, and when I was finished, they looked at me the same way the patrons in the diner had. But they did their due diligence. And they had even called the station in Dutchville. And when they realized that I was telling the truth and that I was from Wisconsin, that did raise their eyebrows. And when I called my mom, and they listened to me cry on the phone with her, that did more than raise their eyebrows. It caused their faces to turn white. I stopped looking so much like a sick dog to them. So there had been a search. And a collaboration between the Short Falls Sheriff Department and the Dutchville Sheriff Department was formed. And I had even ridden in the passenger seat with the sheriff, trying my best to guide him and backtrack my steps to that terrible gravel road. We drove around that small Kansas county for hours. None of the roads we drove on looked anything like the roads I had seen earlier. These roads were normal roads. They had normal traffic and street lights. But those other roads I had traveled when I fled from Sparrow Road, those had been deserted roads. Quiet roads. Eventually Jonathan and Rachel's parents both came out to Short Falls to help look. And that had been hard to face them. But they had never blamed me. Had never once questioned the validity of my story. That had been nice of them. Yes, there had been a search. More than one, actually. But it all seemed to blur into one long hopeless endeavor. And despite how long we looked, we never found any Sparrow Road. Not in Short Falls, Kansas, or Dutchville, Wisconsin. Jonathan and Rachel were officially designated by the state as missing. My story was eventually disregarded as more plausible theories came to light. Theories that the state was more willing to accept. I had suffered some kind of heat stroke, according to the medical experts that had examined me after. We had gone riding. Maybe there had been a crash. Or maybe they had ditched me. Either way, I had gotten separated from the car. And I had suffered a heat stroke. And ended up all the way in Short Falls, Kansas. Sure. And now my two best friends were simply missing. Falling. Not missing. Falling. I did find the well again, however. Some years later. I never went to college. Technical or otherwise. My parents understood. Even if their sloped shoulders told me that they wished I would give it, what's the saying, the old college try. They understood my depression. Although we never called it that and spent most of our time talking around it. And so instead of going to college in Madison, I hung around Dutchville, doing odd-end jobs here and there. And of course I would always keep my eyes open for an old gravel road. Sometimes I swear I would see it. Only to blink and it would be gone. It was 3 years later when I found the well again. I was sitting on the back porch of my parents' house, nursing a glass of whiskey. I had actually put off drinking since that horrible day in '76. Despite my depression, I had never really felt the urge to drink. Had felt the opposite, in fact. In my head, I always saw those crumpled beer cans around the well. That had been enough to put off drinking. For a time. But that night in '79 was significant because we were coming up on the 3-year anniversary of Jonathan and Rachel's disappearance. And the urge to ease that pain took over. So I took my father's bottle of whiskey to the back porch and began to drink. When I felt that malty drink go down my throat, I realized something. I didn't have to look for Sparrow Road or the well anymore. Because the well was inside me. And it was deep. I thought that if I drank enough, if I filled the well enough, maybe Rachel and Jonathan would come rising to the top. Rising like a geyser and then come spilling out of my mouth, just as young as the day they disappeared. That had to be true, because the idea of them falling down an endless tunnel for all eternity was too much to bear. They'll always be falling. And so I drank. I filled the well. A couple years later I had been in a bar, filling the well, when a man in a trucker's hat walked in. The bar owner was upset at the man because he had been late on delivering something to the bar. He was at least a day late on his order. The trucker explained he had gotten turned around on his way. "I'm sorry, Sam," the trucker had said to the bar owner. "You know it's not like me to be late. I'm always on time. But I just got turned around. Ended up on some shit gravel road and took me a while to find my way. Strangest thing. Bunch of abandoned cars on that road dash." "What road?" I had grabbed the man on the shoulder and he jerked around in surprise. He and the bar owner looked at me just like those diner patrons in Short Falls had, all those years ago. "Fella, would you mind letting go of my shoulder?" the trucker asked. I tightened my grip. What was the name of the road? I'm not sure. I don't remember dash. Was it Sparrow? Was it Sparrow Road? I could feel my eyes bulging in their sockets. The bar owner tried to peel me off the trucker, but the harder he pulled, the more I stuck. "Hey buddy, ease off dash." "You said you saw other cars," I said, shaking the trucker now violently. "Did you see a red one? A Challenger?" Bright recognition appeared in the trucker's eyes. I stopped shaking him. "I did," the trucker said. "At least I think it did. It was a red Challenger. It had a faded yellow smiley face painted on the driver door." I screamed. I passed out. I woke up in the trunk tank. When I got out and headed back to the bar, the owner refused to let me enter. He told me if I kept coming back and bothering his people, he would stop calling the police. He would take care of me his way. I never saw that trucker again. On November 13th, 1999, I saw Rachel Lafferty. I was in a bar in Madison, doing what I do best, filling the well. I had gotten exceptionally good at filling the well by this point. If there was a Hall of Fame for filling the well, I was no doubt a first ballot entry. The Badgers were on TV playing Iowa, and it was the end of the third quarter. The Badgers had started a recent tradition where between the third and fourth quarter, the stadium would play Jump Around by House of Pain, and everyone in the stands, would you guessed it, start jumping around. They were starting that now. The camera was zooming in on one section of the stadium, highlighting the students jumping for joy. What I saw almost caused me to spill my drink. Almost, but not quite. Because a spilled drink can't be used to fill the well. Rachel Lafferty was standing in the very center of the section. Unlike the students around her, who were all wearing red, Rachel was still wearing the faded blue shirt and blue jeans she had worn that day. And there was a piece of frayed rope tied around her waist. None of the other students seemed to notice her. She wasn't jumping. She was staring right at the camera. Right at me. She was mouthing something. "We'll always be falling." "Could you turn that off?" I asked the bartender, turning away from the television. "It's the Big Ten championship, asshole," the bartender responded. And then he went back to ignoring me. I finished my drink. Always made sure I finished my drink. And then I got up and left the bar. As I was walking out, Rachel was still on the television, mouthing words silently, and her eyes followed me the way a portrait does. "Come fall with us." A couple of years ago, I had been in a Barnes & Noble perusing their music section. People were giving me the side eye, no doubt because of the way I was staggering around. I had been filling the well early that morning. I was flipping through their vinyl section when goosebumps ran up the back of my neck. When I looked up, Jonathan Belvedere was standing on the other side of the rack. He looked exactly the same as he did that day in 76 Foot. Same blue denim jacket. Same blue jeans. Same yellow t-shirt. He was fingering through the records casually, as if he hadn't been missing for 40+ years. "Some choice tunes here, Padre," Jonathan said. "Good songs to fall to." Then Jonathan began coughing and made a terrible noise like a cat about to spit out a hairball. It also faintly reminded me of old gravel crunching under tires. Then he did spit something out. It floated and landed on my hand. It was a black crow's feather. I ran from the store. I have not seen Rachel or Jonathan since either of those occasions. I took a break from filling the well in order to write this, but already I can feel it calling me back. No matter how much I drink, it never fills all the way. But it needs to be filled. And I will keep trying. After all, just like Rachel had said all those years ago, wells are not that deep. Right? Time to fill up. My name is Harold, and I believe that some of you are aware of the work of a certain Deepweb archivist who managed to delve into the Mortician's network. As you can likely figure out, I am the person who wrote the program he used to delve into the deep web. Since I built my own backdoor into the program, which I informed John of, I accessed his information a couple of months after he vanished. I wasn't planning on contributing to this, but when I established my own connection with the Mortician's network, I decided that he had the right idea. But I am not an archivist. I am too active to just sit and do research on something, even with available resources. But they notified me that they need an independent investigator to verify or disprove cases. Then I read that automated message. Reading the work that John had completed reminded me of why I helped him in the first place. When he asked about a program that would allow him to delve into the deep web for answers without tracing back to him, he told me his experience. He explained his interaction with the cryptid, and it reminded me of an encounter with something equally impossible. I worked as a volunteer for search and rescue before I joined the military. I have assisted in over a dozen rescue operations, and one haunted me until I made contact with the Mortician's network. March 18, 2007, Sunday. A family went hiking in a national forest I am choosing to not disclose. They went for a 4-hour hike starting at 0700. A little over 2 hours into the hike, their 12-year-old son vanished. The parents traced back to the last place they remember seeing him, and upon seeing no signs of his disappearance, they acted. Using his phone, the father called the local ranger station to notify of his son's disappearance while the mother called out to her son. Within 30 minutes, the nearest ranger located the parents and started to look for any trace of their son. After an hour of searching, no trace was discerned. Immediately, the ranger notified his superiors and informed them of the missing child. Within 2 hours, volunteers arrived and a grid search was established. We searched grid by grid, and nobody saw anything until Tuesday afternoon. I was the last person to see that boy alive. The amount of volunteers increased, and I was asked to repeat some grids in case something was overlooked. I was searching along a creek that would expand into a river during significant downpour. Sweeping carefully, I heard a splash. Calling out to the boy while looking for other volunteers in the grid, I raced over to the sound. As I got closer, I couldn't see him, but the sound was getting louder. I glanced down into the water flow. I will never forget his face. Such abject terror in his eyes. His fist banging onto the bottom of the surface, it never breaking the surface tension. The boy was underwater, face up, banging on the top of the creek water flow. I could hear it splash, which was impossible. Heart in my throat, I ran over and tried to reach him. But I couldn't get my hand through the water. It was like a waterbed bladder. I could feel the motion of the water, but my hand was dry. I slammed my fist on the water, with no desired result. I could hear him now, pleading for me to help him. I tried to push my hand through, but it was not happening. Then I glanced up. Not at the face of the boy who was impossibly stuck underwater, but the thing keeping him there. I couldn't immediately make it out, but it was when it dragged him off then realized it was a face made out of water. I chased the boy upstream, but the thing pulled him away too quickly. One of the other volunteers headed over to me. He wanted to know why I was running up along the creek. I started to tell him what I saw, but how can I tell him what I saw? Something in the water grabbed the child and is holding him underwater, and possibly so. That this thing dragged the boy upstream. I lied. I told him I thought I heard the boy, which was true. I just neglected to tell him the sheer impossibility of the entire situation. How could I tell the parents that their child was taken by something underwater and kept there so he could never escape? When I approached the Morticians Network, they asked about my personal encounter and I divulged the entire situation. After verifying the name of the boy, they retrieved a file. Reading through it, I was grateful to be sitting down. 5 years after I last saw that poor trapped boy, his body appeared in a lake 4 states away. DNA evidence confirmed that it was the same child, but he appeared to have aged slightly and mutated. Webbing between his toes, which had lengthened, and gills by his collarbone would allow him to breathe underwater. Claw marks tore at his abdomen, and his eyes and tongue were also gone. He was killed by several creatures, judging by the claw marks. The mortician ruled it as a cryptid-related death, and given the circumstances, his family were not to be notified that he was found again. The designation for this particular autopsy showed that over 300 other people went through a similar metamorphosis and eventual fate. Looking at the mortician who agreed to meet with me, I saw his solemn nod. He knew the question I wanted to ask. This is our burden. We cannot let humanity know the truth about the cryptids. Our documents go further back than most of written history. You may have heard that there was a point where humanity was almost driven to the point of extinction. Should enough of the curtain be pulled back, the cryptids will declare open season on us. Apocalypse event. The reveal of the world's truth, and it turns on us. The mortician spoke softly, his words seemed to hang in the air. I sat in silence, gazing at the 100 of filing cabinets before me. The chambers that I haven't seen the inside of. The sense of unknown that permeates this place. A friend of mine used to work for you. He was an archivist. Normally, I wouldn't have looked into any of this, but the people who choose to work for us, they have had encounters with the terrifying and unknown. But once they learn that we can provide some answers. We are not looking for an archivist at this point in time, but we do need freelance investigators. People who won't dismiss any possibility when they investigate a potential cryptid event. Welcome to the Morticians Network. It all began a few months ago. The heat outside was too much to bear, so I just stayed home all day. My parents and brother had left to go shopping about 15 minutes ago. I had finished playing all the games on my PC, so I had nothing to do. While I was just laying in bed thinking, an idea came to my mind. Why not explore my father's laptop? He barely uses it anyway. Upon opening the old and dusty laptop, I searched through a few folders. Nothing unusual. Just a bunch of documents. Seeing that there wasn't much to do, I was about to close the laptop, having searched through almost all of the files. Then I saw one I forgot to check. It was titled DS. I didn't even think about what it meant or what was inside, so I casually opened it. The file itself was password locked by some app one didn't even know was installed. No hint of what the password was. I shrugged it off, thinking it's probably something related to his job. I had seen pictures on his phone before of organs, tumors, and other disgusting stuff. So I just assumed this was something close to it. After all, he was a surgeon. I shut the laptop off, but saw that next to the box where I kept the laptop was a piece of paper. The words were complete gibberish, but it got me wondering, why would someone even write it? From what I could read, I think it said AVDRTLNLHCXCTYXWE. After looking at it, I saw something. Only a few letters were written in the capital. It said delete. I got curious and opened the laptop back up trying to find the file. It took me a few minutes to find it again, but it wasn't too hard. First I tried in all caps to write the word delete and nothing. Then in lowercase and it worked. I was really excited to see what was about to happen, and I felt proud that I managed to open it. Though now I regret doing it. The first picture was taken in a blurry and dark place with a blanket and someone in the corner hiding. I was a little surprised and worried. The next picture was of a patient during surgery, but something felt off. It wasn't taken in an operating room. It looked more like a basement. At this point I was freaked out and wanted to just shut off the laptop, but something told me to continue. I'm not sure what. The next pic was of a child during surgery, but it was screaming and crying. Its stomach was open with the organs exposed. I was sick to my stomach and was about to close the entire laptop. As I closed the window, the entire gallery opened up. It was all disgusting. Pieces of limbs everywhere. People begging for help. Videos of people being tormented. I turned off the laptop and put it right back where it was. I tried to comfort myself, thinking and trying to find an explanation to why my father had that on his laptop. But I could think of nothing. I could see they came back, their car parked in the driveway. I went upstairs to just assess the situation. Symbols, bodies, and children in pain filled my thoughts. I ran to the bathroom to throw up. The pictures had engraved into my mind. I was clueless on what to do. It's not like I could confront him about it. And I doubt he would be happy if he found out I broke into his laptop. I saw them downstairs, laughing and smiling without a worry in the word. I came downstairs pale and barely standing on my legs from what I had seen. My dad looked at me, still smiling, not knowing I knew his secret. That night I couldn't sleep. The house was so quiet, and outside not any wind, nor was there any sound. Whenever I thought about the things on their ID gag, I wouldn't dare to look at it again. And I wish I hadn't seen it. I wish I could forget that moment. I wish things could go back to the way they were before. I can never look at my father the same way again. But what can I do? My mother is a stay-at-home parent. She has no job, so even if I did report my father to the authorities, where would we go? I need to clear my mind first. I will document what I see here in case I ever go missing. Something that also stuck with me was one of the children, locked up in a dark basement. Whoever recorded the video showed the kid's face, and I recognized him. 3 months ago, the kid who went missing. I won't assume my dad kidnapped him, but I can't rule out the possibility. Since it's a basement, I'm not sure where this kid could be. But I can't just forget this and act like it never happened. I have to help these people. It's the right thing to do. The first thing I thought I would do is investigate what my father does. Maybe if I follow him without getting caught, I can find the basement where these kids are. So a week later, I prepared myself. I will bring a phone to record in case I see something. The first few hours in the morning were like every other day. He had breakfast, got dressed, and went out. He said he was going to work, but once he pulled out of the driveway, he didn't take the usual route. Something doesn't seem right. I tried to find the car, but eventually I lost it. The last place I saw it was at a gas station. I need a better method for this. I need to bring the people behind this to justice. I had the bright idea to go to the hospital where he works. As I walked to the hospital, which was around 20 minutes away, I was just wondering, why would he do this? This isn't the father I know. When I got to the hospital, I tried to find his car, but there was no car that even slightly resembled his. Where did he go? Maybe he was somewhere in the hospital. I walked over to the front desk and asked if my father had come to work yet. I gave them his name, and the expression the woman had on her face was pure confusion. She still checked around on her PC and found nobody by the name I gave them. Something isn't right, she said. Nobody by that name has ever worked here. How deep does this go? It has been 2 days since I last posted something, mainly because I have had no way of getting proof that my father is insane. Our home has been quiet for the past few days, nothing to talk about. As much as I like summer break and not having to do anything, just sitting in bed and relaxing, I dread having to wake up now. As time went on, no matter how much I hated doing it, I realized the only way to save that kid was to reopen the file. Maybe it could tell me the whereabouts of him. Next morning, as soon as my dad left, I opened the laptop and typed in the same password. It opened, revealing the sick things my dad has hidden from us. I tried not to gag while watching these videos. Children getting beaten to death, screams from the elderly. What the fuck is wrong with this man? All of the videos were filmed in the same few rooms. It was either a basement somewhere or an operating room. But where could it all be? My father's entire occupation is a lie. How did we not find out about this earlier? One thing that stuck out was multiple pictures and videos of the kid I mentioned before. Always in the same basement. Always tied up. All of the videos were titled "My Precious." What sick fuck would do this? As I unwillingly kept scrolling through dozens of these sick pictures and videos, I saw something. It was another video, but this time titled "Favorite Family." It didn't start out sick, but slowly it delved into the worst video imaginable. It was a home video my father recorded. He was hanging out with a woman and some kids. Slowly I realized something. These weren't just ordinary people, it was another family. The date on the bottom was July 8th, 2003. He had another family. They were outside, somewhere in a park, just enjoying the moment. Even weirder, my father and mother and father met in 2010. The video slowly moved from a home video to a documentation about his descent into madness. He tortured his wife, and he would regularly get into fights with her. Sometimes he even was considering killing her. The final 20 seconds were filmed during the night. Everyone was asleep. He recorded a video of him in a mask playing around with a knife. The video cut off. I tried to make myself think that it wasn't true. He wouldn't do that. My father isn't like that. I'd tell myself. I shut off the laptop to think about what I had just seen. Those videos weren't just some friends. That was a family. A family he was a part of before he met my mother. I had Googled the date in my town, and sure enough I found an article saying the entire family was killed. But by a gas explosion. The entire house was set on fire and the bodies were never found, although pieces of them were. I couldn't watch anymore. The videos made me sick to my stomach. That day the four of us went out to walk. It was silent for most of the day. My brother was so happy. He would hold their hands while he was just laughing and smiling. Looking at him, I realized that no matter what happens next, I will make sure to protect him. As hard as it is to choose a side now that I know this, I won't let my father hurt my brother. If it comes down to it, I'd rather have a brother than a father. At times I would look at my father and he would just look back at me and smile. That smile warmed up my day. My father was my idol before I had seen the shit he had on his laptop. In the darkest of days, he would cheer me up. Now all I see is a mask, hiding his true identity. As much as I hate him for this, I'm not sure what to do if I had proof. He is my father. That night sleeping was impossible. I can't sleep knowing what he is capable of. I have decided to spend the next few nights at a friend's house since I am aware it's not safe to stay in that house. Thankfully, he doesn't know I know his secret. I forgot to mention this part, but I added an app on the laptop that whenever he uploads a picture or video to there, I get a notification along with the video/picture itself. I'm trying to find every way to get proof. I need to bring him to justice. I know that now. I can't let this all be for nothing, so if I stop posting, this will still be here. Maybe someone could continue where I left off. I have one more idea of what to do. Once I come back to the house, I'll set up an app where I can see the location of my father and where he is at all times. As long as he takes his phone, I can see where he is. With this, I will find and save the kid. In case I ever do stop posting, just assume I'm dead. I would rather die trying to avenge all the people who have suffered because of my father than live and pretend I don't know it exists. These are the coordinates where I hid a USB stick containing all the evidence. These are the coordinates: 44.820934, 15.869271. He uploaded a new video about an hour ago. Titled Betrayal. Just seeing the title scared me. Did he find out? Is he watching me now? Cautiously, I opened it and it wasn't about me. This is the part where you think that's a good thing, but he thinks it's my brother. The video was of him recording the basement where people get tortured. However, he recorded it all on the phone he uses, so it was in high detail. He did it on purpose. Even recording the tools he plans to use on him. He recorded it all because he wanted my brother to be scared. What have I done? My brother will die because of me. I need to get there and stop him now. Thunder rapidly struck through the skies. Rain soaked my clothes. The hard weather we barely face in this town is happening today of all days. I couldn't stop to catch my breath. I would never forgive myself if I couldn't save my brother. Every 3 steps the wind would blow a harsh cold breeze. The weather got worse. Lightning would hit around our town, unleashing a sound so hellishly loud I would forget my sense of direction. I'm only down the street from my house, but I already see his car parked in the driveway. That sick fuck, he would kill his own son. I hadn't even thought what I would do when I got there. It would all be worth it as long as I can protect my brother. I started sprinting, only one goal in mind. The fear of failure pushed me to run faster. I'm here finally. The door is wide open, but the house is as dead as ever. Opening the gate, without even thinking of what waits inside, I ran in. I started going up the stairs, calling my mother's and brother's names. No response. No sign of life. What happened? His car is here, so he wouldn't have just taken them. I checked every room upstairs, but nobody was around. Not even my father. Something isn't right. This time I cautiously checked a room. Every door opened, except one. The bedroom. I took a deep breath, removing all thoughts, and slammed the door wide open. My mother laid on the bed. A deep cut from the neck to her stomach. The knife was next to her. It can't be true. Tears flowing from my eyes. I reached and checked her pulse. It was true, she had died. I couldn't keep my composure and started yelling my father's name. How could he? Where did he take my brother? My life no longer matters. It's no longer just for the kid. No punishment in hell could be enough for this man. In my mother's hand was a note. 3 words written in her blood. I love you. I grabbed my phone and called emergency services. 10 minutes later they had arrived and saw the horror that the man I call my father had done. A detective also arrived on the scene, took some evidence and began questioning me. Tears still came from my eyes. I had lost all hope. I had no way of finding him now. I just had to rely on the cops. The detective who I found out later was called Adam was the only one assigned for the job of finding my father. He gave me his phone number and told me we would keep in touch regarding this whole thing. The ambulance took my mother to the hospital, asked if I needed a ride. I declined, just wanting vengeance. When suddenly I heard static. It was coming from my phone. Thinking I accidentally called someone, as I was about to hang up I heard a voice. The phone number was unknown. The man started laughing and as soon as he did, I knew it was him. Hee, how you doing, champ? He asked me. I tried pressing the hang-up button but it didn't work, nothing did. Just so you know I wouldn't count on the cops. Oh, and someone is here to see you. Muffled screams of my brother filled my head. He was begging for help. You fucking asshole, where are you? I yelled at him. He hung up. The app where I could see whatever he uploaded deleted itself in front of my eyes. Lost, dazed, and confused, I was ready to give up. I had no leads now. Soaking wet, I walked back to my friend's house. There was nothing left for me here. After a few questions I just lay back to the bed they set for me. That night I cried myself to sleep. Thinking about my life before this, about my mother and brother. I didn't save them in time. It's all my fault. If I hadn't seen the shit here, we'd all be alive. That morning, still crying, I checked the comments. Seeing one that mentioned to me to visit the house that burned down. Maybe there could be something there. I packed all my essential belongings. Not expecting to survive the next encounter, knowing that my father won't forget me. He wants me dead. I brought a flashlight, a pocket knife, some food, and my phone. Looking up the address, it was relatively close. And so I hugged my friend and said my goodbyes. As sad as it is, I'd rather die trying to avenge all the people that suffered from my father than live. If I'm dying, I'm taking him down with me. The entire walk there was thoughts of failure. There is nobody to blame other than me. Once I got there, it was all just remnants of what used to be a house. The entire street was dead. All the houses that were once a community of people now turned into abandoned and dusty houses. On the side of the house, a basement. A little terrified, I pulled out the knife. Still shaking, I opened the rusty door. It didn't open first try. In fact, it took almost all my strength to even slightly move it. After a few tries, it however did open. The dust was everywhere and the only source of light was my flashlight. It was incredibly small, so I had to crouch down next door. It opened on my first attempt. There it was. The rooms I have been looking for all this time. It was even worse seeing it with my eyes in front of me rather than a phone screen. The operating room had an old leather chair with blood covering most of it, along with a table with all kinds of tools. However, there was no sign of life here. Nobody could have been here for a while. I was at ease here, taking pictures, and had called the detective. He said he would be on his way soon. Not wanting to contaminate any evidence, I had left the basement and waited outside. Then a notification appeared on my phone from my father. It said, "Too late, champ. Try some other place." My face turned red with anger. He was mocking me and I was ready to just throw the phone away, but the detective called me right as I was about to do it. He was in front of the gate, and my father hung up. Before I could say anything, the detective told me to get in the car. I had to talk to the chief. He would get back here and check for any evidence. We drove to the station. I wasn't really surprised nor scared. Once we got there, he mentioned they may have a lead on where he could be, so me and him will go there and investigate. The reason behind it being there are some keywords talking about me. Maybe I knew the meaning. After 30 minutes, we got in his car and drove away. It was in a forest, with a rented car that my father apparently was hiding in. There was no sign of anyone else, but it could be the key to finding him and my brother. The car ride was silent. Nothing to talk about. Once we got there, I took a look around, but I had to wear gloves so I wouldn't contaminate anything. I did notice a few symbols and words drawn in blood everywhere. What a sick bastard. Once I see him, I will make sure he stays dead for the crimes he committed. The chief just stood next to his car looking for something in his bag. Then as my back was turned away, I heard something. Something metallic. Unsure of what it was, I turned around to see if he heard it too. He looked at me, expressionless with a gun in hand. "Sorry kid, it was nothing personal," he told me. A bullet was shot right in my leg, then before I could scream, another one in my chest. I started convulsing, unable to process what had just happened. He betrayed me, but why? My screams echoed, but then I realized why we were here. All of this, it was all a setup. My father, was always working with the cops. He got in his car, but before leaving told me not to worry, the USB has already been found. That son of a bitch found my posts. He used them against me. Once he started the engine, he left me there to die. I can barely move. This pain is unbearable. Please, help. Good afternoon, Malcolm. Hi, Miss Jackson. Staring out from under my hood, I looked at the computer screen in front of me. Miss Jackson is the head librarian, and she likes to make the rounds and see how the library patrons are doing. My backside is beginning to get sore from sitting on the hard chair for so long. I wish they would get some chairs with cushions, but I guess I could always buy a cushion of my own. Sitting in my usual spot, back in the far corner, away from the main traffic among the stacks, my fingers fly over the keyboard, slipping from website to website. Coming to the library is the only refuge I get from the chaos that reigns at home. Mom's new boyfriend is a complete jackass and is always opening his mouth and criticizing me at every turn. He is also slightly abusive to her. There's no hitting or anything like that, but he isn't soft with his words toward her. I wish she would just kick his ass to the curb, but she just can't find the strength to not have a man in her life. The library is quiet this afternoon. The staff has grown used to me, and the free internet connection allows me to do my homework and surf the web at the same time. One of the things I like about the library in this small town is they don't have a lot of money or know how to create a really secure internet. I am able to go to websites I probably never would be able to in a larger, more modern and secure location. I found I can even log into the web using a VPN, a private server that masks my activities and identity from any prying eyes. Not that I'm doing anything illegal, but I do like poking around in the dark web, and that was one place I don't want anyone knowing about my involvement. I stay far away from the drug websites, the human trafficking sites, and the murder for hire sites. I have no use for those kinds of sites. Though getting rid of my mother's boyfriend would be a good use of an assassin, but she would just cry about his death and then she'd find herself another guy, probably one worse than this clown. Maybe I could have him trafficked out of the country. No, better to just leave him alone. I'm doing a search in the TOR search engine, looking for websites that deal with inventions that haven't been made public. Most of these inventions are things the government would swoop in and shut down if they got wind of them, or confiscate them. Other than that, they are pretty harmless. Like some kid trying to build a nuclear reactor in his bedroom or some guy trying to figure out how to build a time machine. The kid has absolutely no source for the fuel for his reactor and the other guy doesn't want to accept that time travel is against all laws of physics. But it is fun to read. I put in a search for time travel experiments and notice a link to a site that looks out of place. It appears to be a news site. Not the usual thing you would see on the dark web. The part that caught my eye was the date under the link. It was 3 days from now. Obviously, it was a mistake by the site. I'm not sure why, but I clicked on the link and waited for the site to open. When it did, it looked like a text version of a regular news site, but from a news source I'd never heard of. Most of the stories were pretty ordinary and the dates under their headlines appeared to be correct, with today's date. But the story which showed up in the search engine snippet had that same date about 3 days in the future. That wasn't the only thing that I found intriguing. The story was about a woman that had been killed in her apartment, but the police were saying it wasn't an ordinary murder. It seemed as if a wild animal had gotten into her apartment and torn her to pieces. The story even had the day and dates wrong. It said the murder had occurred last night, Saturday. But today is only Wednesday. I looked at the story again, figuring that it had happened last weekend, but I hadn't heard anything about a murder like this in the past few days. If something like this had happened in this small city, the news wouldn't have escaped my ears. I read the story again and then began to think someone was playing an elaborate hoax. It was the only explanation, but why someone would hoax a story like that was amazing to me. Some people can play some pretty sick jokes, and this appeared to be one of them. I looked at my phone and saw that I had less than an hour before the library closed and I wanted to get my math homework finished before I go home. There was no way I'd be able to get it finished at home. Sunday morning came bright and early with the buzzing of my phone on my bedside table. It was only 7 in the morning and I had no reason to get up. So, whoever was calling me and disturbing my lazy Sunday morning was going to get an earful. I looked through my half-closed eyes at the display and see it's Jackie. Why she would be calling me this early on a Sunday was a mystery. "Hello," I grunted into the phone. "Mal, wake up, man. You remember that story you told me a couple of days ago?" "What?" I said, still trying to shake the sleep from my head. "What story?" "The one about the woman that got killed here in town and looked like a wild animal had done it." "Oh, yeah," I said as I rolled onto my back. "Mal, she's dead. Just like you said." Sleep evaporated from my eyes instantly as I sat up in bed. "What do you mean she's dead?" "Just like you described it. Some woman who lives about 3 blocks from your house." "Oh shit. You haven't told anyone what I told you, have you? Someone like your dad?" "No, Mal." "Why?" "Because if the police found out I knew about this before it even happened, they would be looking very closely at me as a suspect." I heard Jackie giggle on the other end of the call. "You didn't kill her, did you?" "Good God, no." "What kind of person do you think I am?" "I'm just yanking your chain." "Hey, I'm going to have to call you back. I need to find a paper or watch the news." "Okay, Call me later. After logging on, I go to the website for the local newspaper and the main story is about the murder, and even though I don't have the dark web story in front of me, I'm pretty sure it's the same story, word for word. It's Sunday and the library is closed. I have no other place to log into the dark web and can't chance it here at the house. The best I'm going to be able to do is get up early tomorrow and get to the library when they open. I'll have about an hour before I must leave and head for school. Reading through the story again, it is so surreal to me. How could I possibly see a story about a murder that wasn't going to occur until 3 days later? The hairs on the back of my neck stood up, telling me the answers to that question were probably best left alone. Monday morning couldn't come soon enough for me, and now I'm sitting in my usual spot, in the dark, back corner of the library. But I'm not alone this time. Jackie is sitting in a chair next to me, watching as I log into the dark web and begin moving toward the news site I'd seen a few days earlier. Before I pull the site up, I look at her and ask, "You sure you want to see this?" "Yes." "It's probably going to be nothing. What are the chances there will be another story about something happening in the future?" She had a point. I clicked the link and the same news site opened. The third headline dealt with the murder, but now it was current, or even past news. It happened a couple of days ago, so it was moving down on the front page in order of importance. I was about to click on the story link to see if anything had changed in the story, but Jackie gasped, and this made me look. The top story was dated for Wednesday night. This coming Wednesday, not last week. The headline read, "Serial Killer Strikes Again." One thing I did not want to do was click the link, but it was clear I had to. My fingers trembled as I moved the mouse to the link and was about to press the button, but Jackie reached over and put her hand on mine. "Do we really want to see this?" she asked. I pulled my hand away from the mouse and looked at her. "I don't know, Jackie. The other day I thought this was just a joke or hoax, but now, obviously, it's not, but what could it be?" I just shook my head. I had no idea what we were looking at. "Maybe the killer works at this news site," she said, "and they're planting the stories." That might be true, but I can't believe I'm the only one seeing these stories. There must be a lot of other people seeing this, and someone would call the cops. This is the dark web, Mal. Some of the sick people that slither around in here live for this kind of thing. Like me. I didn't mean you. I know, and you're right. There are a lot of people moving around in the dark web I wouldn't want to know in real life. She looked back at the screen and shook her head. "We have to look at it." "Are you sure?" I asked. "Yes, though it scares me." "Me, too," I said as I clicked the link. The story opened and we began reading. It told of an old man, living by himself in the eastern part of the city, that was attacked and killed in his home. Much like the other murder, he had been torn apart just like the woman had been. The police had no leads, and now the city was terrified that some new serial killer was on the loose. Look there, just under the headline. I looked and it said that the story had been viewed by over 100 subscribers. That answered the question of whether we were the only ones that knew of this. "We have to tell someone about this," she said. "But who?" "Anyone we tell will just think we're crazy." "You're forgetting the most obvious person to tell." It only took me a second to realize who she was talking about. I almost felt like slapping myself upside the head when it dawned on me. She pulled her phone from her purse and dialed. Switched it to speaker mode, but turned it down so we were the only ones who could hear it. "Smithville Police Department. How may I direct your call?" "I need to speak to Detective Miller." Hold please. This is Detective Miller. Daddy, it's Jackie. Hey, what's up, Pumpkin? I need you to come to the library. Mal and I have something you need to see. I guess he could tell from her voice this was something serious because all he said was that he'd be right there. It only took him 10 minutes to get there because the library is only a couple of blocks from the police station. I think he even walked here. When he found us in the back of the library, he pulled up a chair and asked, "What's up, kiddos?" Jackie pointed at the screen and he leaned in to read the story. "Is this some kind of joke?" "Sir," I said, "I wish it was." "You noticed the date, right?" "Yeah, a couple of days from now." He reached into his pocket and pulled out his smartphone and took a picture of the screen and then made sure to zoom in on the name of the victim and his address. "I don't know what this is, but I intend to find out," he said. "Sounds like someone is playing a joke here, and because of what happened to that woman the other night, I don't like it." "Tell him, Mal," said Jackie. He looked at his daughter and then at me. "Tell me what?" I swallowed my fear, not because I felt cornered, but because I could see he thought this was still a joke and I didn't want him leaving and not taking it seriously. "Sir, that woman that died the other night, I read a story just like this last Wednesday." "You did? You read a story like this 3 days before she was killed?" "Yes, sir, and I thought it was a joke, too. Until I saw the news yesterday and realized it wasn't." I lowered my head and looked at the floor. I realized if I had said something earlier, that woman might still be alive. "I could have saved her," I said softly. I felt her dad's hand on my shoulder and he squeezed it. "You did nothing wrong here, Malcolm. How could you know it was real? But now I need to figure out a way to keep this man safe and catch the bastard who's doing this." He stood up and leaned over and kissed Jackie on the cheek. "Be safe, young lady. I'm going to work." "Okay, Daddy. Catch this person." "You know I will." We watched as he walked away and turned around one of the stacks and was gone. Jackie looked at her phone and said, "I hate to say this, but we have to go or we'll be late for school." "School? Who could possibly think about school right now?" I packed my laptop into my bag and we left the library. When we reached the bottom of the steps in front of the library, we could see her dad walking quickly toward the station. Jackie snaked her arm through mine and said, "Come on, he'll catch the killer, but we still need to go to school." I don't think I have ever experienced a day in school that felt longer than this one. Or the next day. Wednesday came and went. Jackie's dad got to the victim's house early in the afternoon and hid himself in one of the back bedrooms. Unmarked police cars were less than a minute away. Around 8 in the evening, the detective heard some glass breaking in the bedroom next to where he was and he waited until he heard someone come out of the room and start down the hallway. Whoever it was, they were trying to move as quietly as possible, and when they passed the other bedroom, heading for the living room, Jackie's dad slipped out of his hiding spot and followed the guy. When he stepped up behind the killer, he pressed his gun against the back of the guy's head and told him it was over and not to bother looking for the old man because he hadn't been in the house for hours. This guy had come to the house fully prepared to do what he had planned. He had a backpack full of knives and cleavers. He was dressed in black from head to toe, including the standard black ski mask that bad guys like to wear. When he felt the gun against the back of his head, the guy started laughing and said, "You really think this is over? It's just getting started." Jackie's dad called in the backup and within a minute they had the guy down and handcuffed, ready to take away. When they pulled the ski mask off his face, they saw he was just some punk they had dealt with before. He liked to cause minor mayhem, but nothing that came anywhere close to murder. The whole time they were dealing with him, from when they cuffed until they stuffed him in the back of the patrol car, he never stopped laughing. Where was I during all this? Right now, I'm sitting in the library, watching the computer screen. I want to see the story change or disappear altogether. Jackie is at home, praying like she always does, for her daddy to make it home safe. For some reason, tonight she felt the need to put in some extra time asking heaven for a favor. My phone chimed and it's a text message from her dad saying they caught the guy and it was over. Breathing a sigh of relief, I sat back in the chair and rubbed my eyes. Thank God. As I sat there with my eyes closed, I heard a chime from my laptop. There was a text box in the middle of the screen. Do you really think it would be that easy to catch me? You should have just sat back and watched like all the others here. But you decided to do more than watch. Well, watch this. As I watched, the story on the screen began to change. Word by word, sentence by sentence, the story rewrote itself. No longer did it have anything to do with the old man and his murder. When it finished changing, I was horrified at what I saw. I snatched up my phone and dialed the detective's number and almost felt like screaming with each ring. Finally, after a few seconds, he answered. Hey Malcolm, thanks for helping us. Sir. The story changed. What does it say now? Sir, it's Jackie. It was the summer of my junior year when the events of this story took place. My brother and I were chilling at home, playing Super Smash Bros. Brawl when we heard a knock on our door. I answered it to see our older brother standing at our doorstep. Ted. I cried out. Nice to see you, Brad. Is Harry here? Yeah, he and I are playing some Brawl. Care to join us? Ted responded with a fuck yeah. Then he stepped inside. While playing with him was fun, his faster reflexes and greater experience with the game meant he beat us 8 out of 10 times. Even when we tried to team up on him. We soon switched to other games. Pokemon XD Gale of Darkness and Metroid Prime. But soon we grew bored. I figured we could pass the time by playing Yu-Gi-Oh or something. However, Ted suggested we should browse the Deepweb. Isn't that dangerous? I asked. Yeah, Ted. We've heard stories about people going on there. Then having their info leaked and strangers stalking their homes. Our brother informed us as long as we didn't commit the classic amateur deep web browsing mistakes, we'd be fine. Said mistakes were not using a VPN and not unplugging our webcam or at least covering it up if we happened to be using a laptop. Which we were. After making sure the laptop's built-in mic and webcam were covered in duct tape, we went on the deep web. For the most part, it wasn't really as exciting as we were expecting. The best thing we came across was a space shooter in which we played as a giant penis shooting sperm at spaceships. Next, we found a live stream that had a man dancing in just his underwear while rubbing cream cheese on his chest, and he had clothespins attached to his nipples. Not that I want to see anyone get killed or anything like that, but is there anything actually interesting to do on here? I asked. We can check out some more things in a bit. Right now, I'm hungry though. Yeah, me too. As bizarre as it is to say, I think watching this guy has made me hungry for cheese. Do you guys have any food in the kitchen? No. But Mom left us some money if we wanted to order something, Harry said. I was about to propose ordering pizza when coincidentally an ad for pizza popped up on the screen. It read Deepweb's Deep Dish Pizza. I kinda like the name. Should we click on it? Or do you think it may be a virus? Harry asked Ted. It might be. Do you want to risk it? Hey. What the hell? This is an old laptop, anyway, I said. Ted clicked on the banner, which opened up a menu. On that menu were some of the most mouth-watering pizzas we've ever seen. Not only pizza but also pasta, breadsticks, mozzarella sticks, and desserts among other things. Hell, even the salad looked presentable for a pizza place. Above the picture was a button that said, "Order here." We talked about what we wanted for a few minutes and eventually, we decided on a meat lover's pizza with olives, mushrooms, and stuffed crust, mozzarella sticks, apple pie pizza, and 2 big bottles of Dr. Pepper. Just as a precaution, we decided to pay in cash and make sure we put the address in as somewhere public that was close by. When we arrived at our location, which was the library down the street, we saw the delivery guy who had our order waiting by the front desk. Regular-looking dude. He looked to be in his early 30s. What was odd was that he wasn't wearing a uniform or anything. He just had regular clothes on. We paid for our food. Then we went outside to eat it in Ted's car. It was fucking delicious. The meat was cooked just right. And the cheese was super stringy. We were busy trying some of the apple pie pizza and mozzarella sticks when we heard someone tap the driver's window. We looked out to see the delivery guy holding up a bottle of Dr. Pepper. The food was so good, we didn't even notice we were missing one. He motioned for Ted to put down his window. Ted did so. Then the man apologized for forgetting and handed Ted the Dr. Pepper. "By the way, how's the pizza?" the man asked. "This stuff kicks ass. We'll have to order from you guys more often," Ted replied. "Glad you liked it. But, to make up for my foolish mistake earlier, how about I give you guys something extra?" "Oh, you don't have to do that," the man insisted, and eventually we caved. He ran to his car and came back with a small box. He told us it was filled with cookies, then handed it to Ted. "Well, that was nice of him," I said as the man walked away. "Let me get a couple of those cookies." "You got it," Ted replied, opening the box. However, instead of cookies, what we saw inside looked to be some kind of smoke grenade. And it went off, sending fumes throughout the car. The fumes must have been some kind of knockout gas, because we began to feel really dizzy. The last thing I saw before passing out was the man smiling at me through the window. And unfortunately, there wasn't anyone else outside. When we woke up, we found ourselves in a musty, smelly room with single-floor lamp beaming down on us like a spotlight, but very dimly lit. We figured we must be a basement. All 3 of us were tied up with rope in the middle of the floor. From out of the shadows appeared the man. The dim light of the lamp was the only thing illuminating his face. "Look who is finally awake," he exclaimed. "You crazy motherfucker. Let us go," Ted demanded. "Let you go? I can't do that. I like to share something with customers who appreciate my cooking." "Wait, you made those pizzas?" I asked. "Yes, I did. I run this business all by myself." "And what exactly are you going to share with us?" Harry asked, hesitantly. "They say you are what you eat. So, I'll make you guys into pizza," he said, flipping a switch to turn on the overhead light. Now, you may be thinking, if he had a regular light, why did he even bother with that stupid lamp? To be honest, I don't know. The man was odd, to say the least. The only thing I can think of is that he did it for dramatic effect. Anyway, when he turned on the light, it revealed at least a dozen naked corpses hanging on hooks along the walls. And they each had parts missing. One girl had her head missing. The man laughed when he saw our horrified expressions. "You sick fuck," Harry cried out. "Never heard that one before. Oh, and just so you know, this is where the meat for my meat lover's pizza comes from." "Wait, so you mean that we've been eating?" "That's right, bitches. You've been eating people meat." All three of us started gagging. "Oh, come on, don't throw up." "I have enough cleaning to do as it is," the man said. "And I'm guessing you were going to kill us. Then make us into toppings?" I asked. "Hey, you catch on quick. Now, I'll give you all a couple of minutes to decide who'll be first," the man said, sharpening a knife with his back turned. I looked over to see what my brothers were doing. It turned out, Harry and Ted had found 2 shards of glass that the man must have forgotten to pick up, and were trying to cut away their ropes with it. They both gave me a look, so I knew that I had to be the one to distract him. The man turned, sporting a white toothy smile and holding a large carving knife, then began walking towards us. Luckily, he couldn't see what my brothers were doing from where he was. "Wait," I said, sitting up. "What is it?" he asked, with a hint of annoyance in his voice. I was just wondering how one gets to be a cannibalistic pizza maker. "Are you stalling?" "No. I just figured someone with such an interesting occupation must have an interesting background. Well, it's not like anyone will be able to find us out here. I suppose I can summarize to you guys what my life has been like." We all made sure to look at him and pretend to seem interested. "See, I grew up the middle child of 4 brothers and 5 sisters. Everyone in my family had a natural cooking ability. That is except for me. No matter how hard I tried, I couldn't get the hang of it. Something my family chastised me greatly for. So, when I was 16, I did the only rational thing I could think of. I drugged my entire family, cut off parts of their flesh, then baked my first pizza using the meat. And let me tell you, it was a damn good pizza. I even made my family eat it. But they threw it up. I could tell they liked the taste of it though. And so did you guys. Did you kill your family?" "HM? Oh, of course. And I burned all the evidence. After that, I drifted for a while, setting up my business in different places. Before I came here, I admit running things was difficult. It wasn't easy getting victims. That is until I stumbled across this Deepweb stuff. I must say it's very convenient, and a great way for me to run things. Now, have you decided who will be first yet? Because if not, I'll decide for you." "Actually, we have," I said, feeling 2 sharp objects poke my palm. "Who will it be then?" "Shards." The man gave me a confused look. That quickly turned to surprise when Harry and Ted sat up as I lay on my side. Before the man could react, they threw the shards of glass at him. One went right into his throat and the other in his face, cutting a gash right next to his eye. He staggered back, gasping as his temple and neck bled. My brothers quickly pulled off the rest of their ropes. Then, Ted charged the man, while Harry untied my rope. Once I was free, we joined Ted in kicking the shit out of that dude. It turned into a good old-fashioned brotherly ass whooping. I mean, we went to town on this guy. We kicked him in the ribs for a few minutes. Then we took turns stomping on his crotch. We even did that thing where Harry got him up and held him with his arms behind his back, and Ted and I took turns gut punching him over and over until he went limp to the floor gasping for air. As much fun as it was beating the crap out of that asshole, Harry eventually went upstairs and found a phone in the house and called the police. When they arrived, you could tell some of them were freaked out by how crazy the scene looked. A couple detectives took our statements while some uniformed officers wearing latex gloves started bagging evidence. 2 more officers arrested the man, noting he was lucky that one shard of glass didn't go any deeper into his neck. After the detectives got all the information they needed from us, another officer then gave us a ride back to the library. You know, throughout the questioning, there was one thing we all 3 forgot to mention. We still had some of that pizza left over in Ted's car. And I know we should have turned it into the police. But as crazy as that guy was, he was right about one thing: that pizza was damn good. And my brothers and I figured, why let good food go to waste? So it happened last summer, a few months after I had broken up with my college girlfriend, Tina. We had been in relation for I guess 3 years or so. Not that I really didn't care anymore. It's just that I really had a hard time getting over her, though during our time we got to learn that we weren't the ideal types for one another. Like, I am an introvert most of the time, don't feel like sharing anything. But Tina happened to be my polar opposite. She had this principle which she devised herself, which she used to call the principle of transparency, which to her implied that couple are in need of sharing everything with one another for the sake of keeping a relationship. And by everything she actually meant everything from what I ate, to what time I took a bath, and even at what time my dad arrived home, and in return she would literally share everything with me, including her childhood crush and the first time she got to sleep with someone, even calling me on my way back home to discuss what brand of women's underwear I prefer the most. Well, having exams next week, I wasn't really in the mood of talking about bras and underwear as the sophomore years looked to be menacing as the days went by. But we had our good times as well. Like, she was always sincere and devoted towards me, like all the time, and she was indeed a charming girl a guy could get to know. So why we decided to break up? Well, just as she was sincere, her jealousy came as an extra package. I mean, she used to be literally jealous of any girl who would approach me, which even included 5-year-olds. Anyone could actually interpret this from her spiteful stares, and you could even hear the gritting of her teeth. I had the worst during group works where we had to obviously work with the opposite gender, but Tina wasn't the type to understand that. She literally wanted the name and phone number of the girls I ever worked with and would call them in the middle of the night, warning them that I was only hers. By the way, I am doing my bachelor in psychology at a local college in Missouri. My female groupmates actually found my girlfriend's behavior funny and amusing, except the time when I was discussing the upcoming term paper with Rebecca regarding sleeping disorders. Tina strode into our conversation and literally pulled Rebecca's hair. I then realized that it was truly getting out of hand. Tina explained that she was only analyzing whether Rebecca's hair had a better cut than hers and whether I would be drawn towards it. I was indeed upset with her, and Rebecca didn't look happy as well. That day I still remember it. I held Tina's shoulder and coldly told her, "Tina, look, it really isn't working between us." Tina was literally shaken. A drop of tears sprinted out from her left eye while it melted down along her cheeks. She looked at me in utter bewilderment for a few seconds and then shifted her gaze to Rebecca and said, such with a dry smile, "Oh, I now see, you truly love her haircut. Perhaps you two even made love, yeah? So this is how it ends for us?" Hey, wait, now you're making things up. It's not like that. We are only groupmates. I tried to hold Tina's arms, but she shoved away. I called her name, but her only reply was her cold shoulders with her bitter steps stalling away from us. I apologized to Rebecca, but she was too disturbed with the whole thing to give me a straight reply. She only muttered out, Your girlfriend is such an asshole. Well, she is no longer my girlfriend, that's for sure. That evening when I arrived home from college, I tried calling Tina. Her phone was off. I thought she needed some time alone, so I let her be like that. But days went by, her number remained dead as usual. She even dropped out of college, and when I went to visit her home, I found out that she moved away. Geez, I really couldn't make out the extent of her credulity. The least she could have done was to inform me that she was moving away and get her number revived once more. I obviously was not the only one who wanted to contact her. What about her parents? That reminds me, Tina barely made contact with her parents after she moved out on her own the time she turned 18. I really didn't know how I was feeling about this breakup: confused, heartbroken, delighted, or disappointed. But one thing was sure, I really missed her company as my lonely days oozed along. I know a bit of hacking. No, I should be saying that I am pretty good at it. In fact, there was a time when I used to visit the deep web quite often, and by piggyback hacking I used to explore its depths. Obviously, I was not into those sick stuffs, but the deep web can also be regarded as a hub filled with useful resources which you won't normally find in the surface, and it also helped me in my studies in a lot of ways. But be warned, it's not a place for babies. If you allow your naivety to function there, you may unconsciously even invite your doom upon yourself. But usually, I tried my best to remain on the safe side, except one time. That one time was well enough to ostracize myself from the deep web for an eternity. My breakup with Tina was jamming me with poisonous pills of loneliness. At times I even enjoyed watching sadistic videos of people killing each other in the deep web. I knew I needed to find someone, unless I wished myself to end up like those crones. It was at that time I came across a forum whose slogan was "Find Your Ideal Match." Strangely enough, recently I started getting spam mails asking me to join this forum in the deep web. Pretty peculiar, as spam mails never mentions the deep web, though I never got influenced to visit this forum until now. There are loads of sites in the surface web where you can chat with various girls to find your ideal match, and even those where you can have your hot talks with hookers, though I never ventured into those. They always seemed so fake and predictable to me. However, something about this forum drew me towards it. I really don't know to this day. Perhaps it was my loneliness, but I honestly regret it to this very day. Anyways, the platform of this forum really impressed me. It at first wanted to know my name and age, and then went into asking me series of relevant personality tests. As a psychology major, it did not take me time to guess that the system was evaluating my personality type through the Myers-Briggs Type Indicator test. My results soon came as me being INTJ, introvert, intuitive, testing and judging type. I was already known to my psychology type, so I wasn't really surprised. Then the system went into a filtering process, and after some time it recommended that a girl named with the name sassy_con_hot191998 is my ideal type. I felt a bit odd, like how can a personality test just recommend me one girl? Especially how can a system be so precise into recommending me my ideal type? It was indeed odd, but seeing the girl's picture, I was surely impressed. She had dark flaxen hair with dark eyes, lovely lips with sharp nose and cheek lines, the complete opposite of Tina's roundish face with blonde curls. What the hell? Why am I even comparing that creep with this beauty? I found she was online. She knocked me straight away. "Hey handsome, how's it going?" I was taken by surprise with such an abrupt inbox. I didn't even have a profile pic, so it was startling to see this random girl calling me handsome. I just replied, Hey, looks like I got to be your ideal match. Don't worry, we will have loads of fun, I promise." Now I grew a bit nervous, suspecting whether she was a hooker or something. I replied, "Okay." She typed, "You doing well?" "Yeah, sort of." "You don't sound well. Did you experience a breakup recently?" This really surprised me. No doubt, This girl was quite sharp. I typed, "Yeah, but how could you guess?" Well, this is a place lonely people end up and goes true for the heartbrokens, perverts, and even widowers, so it wasn't hard to guess. I was impressed with her logic, but the thing I typed, I truly regretted it right after I pressed enter. Are you feeling lonely as well? Halter cowboy, we don't do stuff so hastily here, winky face. Damn. That was indeed a dumb thing to say in the first place. I wrote, if you don't mind sharing, have you also experienced a breakup? She did not seem to pay a heed to my text as she wrote next, so how was your XGF? I was going to type very frustrating, but Regina burst into my room. Dinner's ready, squirt. Come down. Say, what the hell are you even doing? Can't you knock before you enter my room, please? Whatever. What you doing? Chatting. With a prostitute, hey? What the hell? Why would I even do that? Because you are blushing and it looks quite obvious. Can you please get out of my room? Not until you get downstairs for dinner. Okay, I get it. I am coming down. Sheesh. Regina's my elder sister, but what makes her menacing is that she is working in the police as a detective. She is like 26, married to her senior colleague police officer, Jason, and I did not even get to the worst part. She bugs me like anything, meaning she is overly attached to me, obviously not in an intimate way, but it means to indicate her overprotective nature and her sisterhood. She sniffs into all aspects of my life, always suspecting me and what she says being engaged in foul play. She no longer lives with us but pays us regular visit, as she always had to fulfill this need of rummaging through the life of her brother. Oh, there is something even worse than the worst. My sister even installed a bug in my phone which gives out a signal every time my phone turns off. Now to her it is a form of protection in the sense if I get kidnapped one day somehow and if the bad guys get to turn off my phone, my sister could then track them. When I found this out, I was like, what the hell? Why would someone even kidnap a 19-year-old? I asked her. These days even grandmas get kidnapped, stupid. What the hell? Stop treating me like a 5-year-old. I looked at Jason. He said, your sister's right, Squirt, the days are tough, man. We need to get all forms of protection as much as possible. But why the tracking? Isn't that a breach of private right? Jason bent a bit towards me to adjust his large 6 foot 5 inches with my average. Look, we aren't actually tracking you in rough sense. It is just a protective measure. I even installed it in my parents' phones as well. Listen, Squirt, your sister and I, we work in the police and there is no telling what may happen to you folks. I don't like getting into the details, but undoubtedly the days have grown tough now. Criminals always target the families of those who dedicate their lives towards fighting for justice. You do understand how much your sister loves you, so please do respect our initiative. So yeah, I finally gave in and got my phone bugged, but the thing was that whenever my phone died out, my sister would always call home in order to ask my whereabouts. But it wasn't all that bad in the end, as I didn't feel bugged at all. But there are good parts to Regina as well. Being a detective, she would sometimes discuss cases with me, asking me about the psychological disorder infesting the offenders. Usually the ones committing murders suffers either from antisocial personality disorder or being victimized with intermittent explosive disorder, and the rapists being driven with either erotomania if the victim is known or sexual addiction if the victim someone is random. You know, Squirt, one day you may even end up being in the crime intelligence division if you keep this up. My sister would praise me. Thanks, but I really don't feel like being a cop, especially if it's with you. I smirked. She would next hit me with the closest object she could find and we would laugh in the end. Our dinner would have been a silent if Regina and Jason wouldn't have discussed their next holiday destination. The locations ranged from California, Texas to Chicago and then ended up being in Italy, but the discussion did not look like it would never cease. Then I just burst out. Why just choose a place already? The Grand Canyon or even Hawaii? My sister nodded. Hey, the Grand Canyon sounds smooth. What do you think? Jason replied, that sounds great. He pointed towards me. You know, Squirt, we should hire you as our trip advisor for our next vacation. Yeah, $100 for each advice. I smirked. No, my friend, you deserve at most a nickel. Hearing this, my sister and parents burst into laughter. I couldn't help but smirk a bit in order to accept my defeat. Some of you may think that even after being 19, why I still haven't moved out from my parents' house. Well, the thing is that I still don't feel like having a job right now. I am doing good at college and my parents are cool about bearing my expenses because they feel like I got a good future. So hey, why move out if your parents still agree to pay all your bills? Hey. After finishing dinner, I just couldn't resist my temptations and jolted to my room. Not to my surprise, I found a new inbox for my ideal match. Hey, are you still there? Why don't you reply? Sorry, I was having dinner with my family downstairs. My sister demanded me to go downstairs, so I left without replying. Oh, how cute. So is your sister hot? I was a bit taken back by this question. Here I was sitting and talking to a complete stranger, but it felt like we knew each for a long time. I guess that is how hookers are trained to sound familiar, but in my mind I was wishing that she wasn't some sort of an online hooker like the ones who are infamous in being exhibitionists, who would initially lure you with their lustfulness, entice you, enchant you to fetch away your personal information, and when the time seeps in, would eventually drain away your credit card balance as you get to know them too better, or like the way I would term it, as non-recognizable. Anyways, I already felt like I was being drawn by her. Perhaps it was due to my months long of lonesomeness. Something inside me wanted this conversation to stay alive, so I replied, yeah, sort of. She was quite popular among guys back in college. Then suddenly her webcam was turned on, and to add to further dose to my nervousness, her face appeared in front of me. So, does she look hotter than me? All these happened in such a rush that I completely lost myself for a while, or even more, because the next thing I did was indeed utterly dumb. According to the safety standards of the deep web, you are to maintain your privacy as much as possible. You must maintain anonymity at all times, and you mustn't, I mean it, you mustn't turn on the webcam at all cost. Some even advise you to cover up your webcam with tape in case your PC gets hacked. There are times where the hacker takes full control of your PC from your end. That person could even turn on your webcam and get a snapshot of your face and use it to kidnap you and then ask ransom from your parents. Phew. I know that's a lot of stuffs, but the deep web isn't a place for babies, of course. To my utter stupidity, as I turned on the video chat from my end, I began to marvel at the beauty of my new ideal match. She was Raven, perhaps 18 or may even be 20 years old, similar to my age. But there was something about her which drew me right from the start. Maybe it was her eyes. It looked familiar, perhaps like Tina's. What the hell? Why was I even bringing my ex into this? Tina had blonde natural curls with a round face, but this girl, she looked like an absolute stunner, an epitome of raven beauty with a sharp nose and a sleek cheek line. I was absolutely taken, plus I no longer regretted for not having tape on my webcam. Hey there, gosh, you really are a cutie. It took me some time to adjust to my new situation because I didn't want to appear like a complete loony or a pervert in our first video chat. Oh, hey. What's up? After those words just literally staggered out, I knew it for sure that I sounded like a complete idiot. Pull yourself together, Johnny. But to my surprise, she just gave a sweet smile, ignoring my lameness, and replied, oh, I am new to this neighborhood, so I am just adjusting. Really? Where are you from then? From Missouri. Hey, I am from Missouri as well. Ouch. I made a damned mistake back there. You weren't supposed to disclose your location in the deep web. Oh, cool. So when can we meet? Ha. We just met and she already wanted to meet up with me or possibly wanted to hook up. Since I wasn't replying, she wrote instead, how does Saturday night sound? Meet you at the Davies at 7 sharp. I felt desperate and clueless, so I replied, sure, I will be there. Wait, I never got to know your name? Ugh. Silly me, tongue sticking out. My name is Janet, but you can call me Know Me Jane 'cause it rhymes with pain. Ha ha ha. At this point, I really felt extremely awkward. There was something about this girl which made me uncomfortable right from the start. Oh cool, I am John, but you can call me Johnny and I don't know what it rhythms with, lol. Ha ha ha. Okay, see you on Saturday and I will rhyme it up for you, winky face. It was 6:50 and I arrived at the Davies, and while I was looking up at the menu, I noticed the same girl I met on the deep web that day stroll in. Surprisingly, she did not have to scour around the entire restaurant to search me. It seemed she knew where I was instantly. More appropriately, she remembered my face. She was well adorned in a dark dress matching it up with her dark hair, but the most appealing factor was her purple lipstick and her sleek figure. I was so deeply mesmerized that I forgot to return her hand wave as she approached me. I just kept intently gazing at her as she approached me. Hey, you are Johnny, right? Yeah, and you're Janet, right? She smiled shyly and said, please call me Jane. I told you the reason, if you can recall. I replied, feeling embarrassed. Yeah. Because it rhymes with pain. I noticed her face turn dark a bit as she pressed her lips and said, right. I didn't want to ask her straight away regarding the pain and suffering she had gone through or the pain she was in right now because I didn't want to ruin the moment. So, where were you before you moved in? I asked, trying to break up the tension between us. At some place, of course. It's better we don't talk about that. I instantly felt stupid after receiving her reply. I didn't want to sound too boorish at our first meet, but it seemed like that I was already making her feel uncomfortable right from the start. Okay, Johnny, let's not get into personal details at the moment. Out of suddenness, she asked, so what made you into that website? Well, you see, I was feeling lonely, that's all. Why did you break up with that ex of yours? I just gave her a slight nod as a reply, not knowing how to answer that. So how was your ex as a person? Usually, girls don't like to ask about the guy's exes, especially when you are at your first date. I then remembered that she also asked about Regina, my elder sister, that day. That made me think, perhaps she is just evaluating the various girls who have been around in my life. From my psychological knowledge, I can interpret her in being of a vigilant and protective type. I wish not to speak about her. She was a terrible person. She used to bug me a lot. I really don't know what made me surge up like that back then. Perhaps all the ill thoughts I had of Tina simply just gushed out. Her reaction was normal. She just lowered her gaze and looked surprised and gave a series of nods saying, okay. Almost abruptly her mood changed as she brought up her face with a cheerful smile saying, let's all forget our past and just move on together, okay? Damn. This girl is truly my ideal match. I squealed internally in silence. For the next 1.5 hours, we chatted merrily, and to my contentment I discovered both of us shared a lot of similar interests. Jane loved football, tennis, and loved playing video games in her PS4. Her favorite game was Last of Us. Just like me, she claimed herself in being dexterous in hacking, or perhaps even better, as she claimed that she has ventured far deep the dark corners of the deep web, which most ordinary hacker wouldn't possess the skill to even crawl in there. I was intently hooked by this gorgeous woman. After dinner, we exchanged numbers, and just as we parted ways, she edged towards me and daintily placed a kiss on my cheeks. It felt like a thunder shock as my cheeks immediately felt like hot burning charcoal. She winked at me and said, "That is your goodbye gift, just to let you know I had a terrific evening with my new ideal match. See you next Saturday, and don't worry, I will make the call." I felt like as if the sweetness of the heavens had finally descended upon me. Days went by sluggishly, and I tried calling Jane but found I couldn't reach her. I tried to pacify myself by saying, "She is a hacker, John, so it is quite common for her to keep her number off." But each day felt like months, and as each hour passed by, my heart sank deeper into the abyss of restlessness. I tried inboxing her at the website I met her but found she wasn't online. Ugh. Where is she? Then on Thursday night, I got a call from Stephen, one of my classmates and also my group mate. "Hey John, do you know where Rebecca is?" "What do you mean, where Rebecca is?" It's like she hasn't come home yet and her parents are asking over to see whether she is staying over at anyone's place. Wait, she normally does not like to sleep over even if it is at a girl's place. And she is not someone to run away as well. I know, man, that is the thing I told her parents. Even they agreed. We tried calling her hundreds of times now, but her phone is dead. I looked at the wall clock and found that it was past 10 p.m. She won't be staying away for this long without calling. Her parents called the cops and they are checking around. Okay, inform me as soon as you get an update. Okay, man, I will. I also tried calling Rebecca a few times only to find that it was of no use, as most likely a dozen other people must be trying to reach her at that moment. The night went by without Stephen calling me, implying there was no update on Rebecca's whereabouts. I visualized her running away from home. Perhaps she needed some personal space. Perhaps she wanted to move out from her parents' place but was too embarrassed to tell them that. Whatever was the case, I just prayed for her to be okay. Stephen called around 7 in the morning. "Hey man, come over at Rebecca's place. Oh man, it's a complete mess. Quick." What? What happened? Rebecca's been murdered. I will spare you the details for now, you just get here. I lost no time. I hopped on my bicycle and dashed across the neighborhood. Rebecca. Murdered? How? When I reached her place, I found that the front yard of her place was strewn with cops. I got a glance at Stephen just nudging outside her place and went over to him. "Hey, just what the fuck happened?" "I don't know, man," he wailed. "I wish we knew, but in the morning they just found her body at the old abandoned warehouse, completely naked." He yanked at my collar. "Her head has been completely thrashed." "You hear me? Completely thrashed. With a chainsaw. There is nothing of her left to make you recognize her." I tried to get in and have a look at her, but the cops stopped me from entering even the front yard. I noticed Rebecca's mom crying frantically while her father held her tightly and her younger brother wailing beside them. Whoever or whatever did this wasn't a human, he was a monster. On Saturday afternoon, Jane called. "Hey, how have you been? Can we meet up tonight?" "Oh, that sounds swell. Is something wrong? You don't sound right." "No, it's just that I am just feeling a bit down." "Why? Did someone you used to love just die?" "Ha!" Her words run up my eardrums. How does she know? Though I was not in a relationship with Rebecca, but from her words it felt as if she sounded spiteful. No, it's not like that. Someone I used to know passed away yesterday. She used to be my classmate and also my group mate. Oh my, how did she die? She got killed by some crazy psycho. You used to love her? No, it's not like that. She was just a friend. Johnny, I can perfectly understand how you feel, so why don't you just come over at my place and we just mingle around? Shoot. Is she inviting me to have sex with her? Jane's apartment looked old and dreary from the outside. Most likely she rents the place herself, and hackers usually loves cloudy places like this. Still, a sense of uncertainty tingled my spine as I made my way towards the stairs. Jane opened the door right after my first knock. Hey, look who's here. Come in. She allowed me to enter her apartment. As I stepped in, I could smell whiskey and a mixture of other drugs and alcohol looming in the air. Damn. I am at the wrong place. I should be getting home right now. Jane snapped. Hey, you just got in. At least spend the night with me. We are holding a special live streaming event on the Deepweb and you will be our star guest for tonight. I don't understand. What do you mean by that live streaming event? Oh, you will soon understand it. You will get to understand everything. I promise you, boyfriend, as tonight you won't be going home for dinner. Before I could properly collect what she had just said, she got hold of a whiskey bottle lying on the side drawer beside us and lunged it across my head. The last thing I remember was seeing the sleek legs of Jane as she whispered huskily, I hope I haven't hurt you too much as we got a long night ahead of us. And then everything went black. Today is a special night, people. 'Cause today I finally get to have my revenge on my cheating ex. Thank you all for your presence, as tonight you won't be disappointed. The voice sounded familiar. As I drew open my eyelids, the first thing I noticed was the silhouette of a feminine figure against the computer screen. I began to look around and found out that I was sitting in a tiny room with a computer, bed, and their hostile possessor. I noticed some metallic tools on top of the bed. I tried to get up and found that I was completely strapped in with tapes and ropes. I gulped and murmured to myself, this can't be really happening. Then the girl looked away from the computer screen and glanced at me. Look, who is awake? Oh. I hope you are all right, because we are going to have a busy night tonight. I swear, her voice sounded a lot different from the time we dated. Jane had a deep voice, if I could recall, from our first meeting, but she sounded completely different and like someone I knew very well. She edged towards me and bent downwards to my level. Only then I noticed that she was completely naked. I twitched. She gently brushed my hair with her right hand, and it was then I felt a surge of pain on my head. My head still hurt like crazy, and her handling wasn't making me feel any good. She looked at me intently with her hypnotizing eyes. Her face gave out a glow of sadism, indicating something dark and insidious just lay ahead. Where am I? I managed to blurt out. My throat felt dry and heavy. You will soon find out everything. Don't worry, stupid. The way she uttered stupid sounded familiar, but head felt too heavy for me to think properly. She hit my head out of spite, even though it was just a glancing hit, but the prior pain made the hit truly excruciating. I gasped for my breath. I began to feel sweat trickling down my forehead as Jane pushed my chin to bring my head visible to the screen. See guys, here's my ex. Doesn't he look cute? I looked at the tiny computer screen, unable to fathom who were there to watch me in live stream. Then something just struck me. Did she just mention me as her ex? As I tried to figure it out, she yanked a second hit on my head, which felt 1,000 times painful than the last one. She whispered, "You fucking asshole." I felt nauseated, and it seemed like I was going to throw up any moment. Why did she refer me as her ex? She addressed her audience and said, "So suggest me your ways, guys. How should I put an end to this? We all know that this asshole deserves the worst among all, am I not right?" That time, most likely the screen was pounding with suggestions as Jane began to read them out loud. Let's see. Death by strangling. Nope, too ordinary. Death by poisoning. The fuck? Are we still in Shakespearean age? Burn out his body. Oh no, he's too cute for that. Chainsaw him like the way you did to that bitch who stole him from you. This last suggestion made me peer at Jane with wide eyes. Rebecca. She killed Rebecca. Tina? Oops, looks like he knows it all now, chuckled Jane. No, I should be calling her Tina. Then she bent down and eyed at me. Look at what you have done to me. I am no longer me anymore. I am now just a fucking slut and a murderer, thanks to you. I once more gasped for my breath because all these were too much for my taking. I stared out in utter disbelief. I don't understand. Tina, what made you become like this? Tina's fucking dead, you moron. I am Jane. Born out of pain, she blasted out, gritting her teeth. You killed her the day you dumped her for the dark-haired snatcher. I remained silent as words found it difficult to pour out from my mouth. She continued, I always suspected that you were losing interest over my blonde curls and round face, and the time I saw that bitch with you I realized you were edging towards sleeker-looking woman with dark hair, and I wanted to prove myself right. That is why I decided to transform into this slut, hoping that you would fall for me. A part of me secretly wished that you would sincerely state how much you missed your old girl Tina. If you would have done that, I would have spared that snatcher and also would have surely returned to my old self. I honestly wanted to give you a second chance, a chance to throw myself at your arms, but oh no. You just had to fall for a sleeker woman and make me sound terrible to her. What about the ideal match website? To my surprise, Tina burst out into chuckles and giggles. She looked euphoric for a few seconds, and then her voice turned deep like that of Jane. Oh, that. Johnny, you really think you are smart? You are fucking predictable like all men. In case you didn't know, I already knew you were at the Deepweb because I recognized your username WM_Tyler. That's your pen name and also your anonymous name, so once you entered the Deepweb I was able to track you down. To be more specific, I have always tracked you, John Turner. She edged even closer to me. I could now feel the heat of her rasped breaths. Thanks to our principle of transparency, I got to learn all about you, but there is something you missed asking about me, my past. I grew up being severely bullied in kindergarten. You know what my crime was? I was born a prodigy, excelling in my studies all the time, which was my biggest crime. My parents could not do much. They just simply complained, but the teachers never paid any attention to my woes. Middle school wasn't any better. The girls used to dump trash into my locker. They were dark-haired, always mocking my natural blonde curls, and your bitch was one among them, and the guys used to attempt into pulling up my skirt. I was in a desperate state. There were times I even wanted to end my life to drain away all this pain forever, but then I came across this thing called hacking, which changed my life forever. Initially, I had trouble with all the coding, but knowing myself as a natural genius, I was able to learn all the tricks, and then I began my experiments. I regularly used to hack into the school's central database and change the grades of my bullies. You should have seen their faces when they used to get their grades, but the best part was that they were already dumb students getting dumb grades. I only made them look even dumber. My school had a hard fixing up the entire system once it got discovered. By the time I became a teenager, I was able to hack into emails and even send emails under my offenders' names and cause misunderstanding between them and their boyfriends. By the time I entered high school, I was already in the deep web, scouring over all the crazy places. Tina eyed at me hypnotically. Want to know how well my skills are now? I can now get to that Mariana's Trench and come back to the surface without drowning. The day you proposed to me, I promised myself that I am going to make this man the happiest person in this woman. I gave you everything I had, my body, my love, my pride, my vanity, my knowledge, my skills. I would even go to the college's central database to see whether my grades weren't surpassing yours, and if it did, I used to suppress those because I wanted to see my man become better than me. I gave you everything, and this is how you reply me." Her voice turned hoarse at her as she uttered her last sentence, with drops of tears sneering out of Tina's eyelids, leaving me completely blank and speechless. After the breakup, I thought if I had moved out of Missouri, I would soon be able to move on. But the memories of someone was still stopping me from doing so. That someone is you. Tina wasn't normal. She was suffering some sort of mental disorder, but upon evaluating her symptoms, I was finding it difficult to deduce it, as this was the first time I seen someone like this. The worst part was that she always had me on the tips of her fingers. Even during her times of innocence, she knew how to mentally manipulate me and keep me within her grip. I kept on pondering, it isn't personality dissociative disorder, as she can make distinction between herself and her alter ego, Jane. This isn't histrionic personality disorder, as she now carries a murderous intent. This is an intermittent explosive disorder. So I returned here with a new face, new body, new name Janet, and with a clear new intent to kill off those who have disgraced me. I knew I needed help, so I shared my story at a forum in the deep web where people share their vengeful intentions. The community there took pity in me, saying that I deserved better in life and needed to get rid of those people who have poisoned my life. 2 large men volunteered to kidnap that bitch and bring her back here. Boy, was she scared, yet so stubborn. I gave her several chances to be truthful towards me, as I knew her since childhood, and admit that she had snatched away my man, but each time I asked her, she just arrogantly denied and demanded to be freed. Then I grew sick of her obstinacy, so picked up the chainsaw which I originally reserved for you and witnessed her beautiful, sleek face literally wither away. I wanted you to get the message as quickly as possible, so I told one of those big hunks to cut one of her arms and throw it in the front yard of her home, and leave the rest of the body at an old abandoned place. Those men were professionals, so they knew exactly how to do it without getting noticed. That way we would play it safe with the dead body, and also this would enable us to gain the attention from our prime target, which would require the most to set up our trap. Tina gave out the foulest laughter I had ever heard. Then the knowledge I was desperately seeking finally showed up: borderline personality disorder. Damn. This was going to be a hard one. Even a rare case. If I wanted to save my skin from her, I needed to manipulate her somehow. Given her extreme level of sharpness, I could tell it for sure. It won't be easy, perhaps even impossible. Tina was reading out all the suggestions posted to her regarding the possible methods for my execution. These included throwing me off a cliff, cutting me off and feed my meat to the dogs, impaling me with large nails, crushing my skull and then pull off my brain and blend it to make brain juice. What the fuck, guys? Can't you come up with anything better than all these crap? Something to make him really feel my pain and make him pay for good? Tina complained. Then suddenly, the doorbell rang and I heart leaped. This may sound utterly stupid, but I actually thought it was my sister, who somehow got to trace me and came to my rescue. I heard Tina opening the main door, and I heard a voice which sounded familiar. Then the door to the room I was held cracked open. But the person who came in, with Tina, in fact, was the last person I had suspected of appearing. Stephen? He glanced at Tina and asked, "So you finally caught the old bozo?" She dryly replied as she chuckled upon peering at me, "Yes." Her countenance looked cold and emotionless. Wait. What the hell was going on here? Stephen? Is he behind all these as well? My head burned like crazy as I began to rewire all that was happening here, because condensing all the facts was the only way I could actually devise a way to get my ass out of here. Stephen looked at me. He did not seem the least bothered at Tina's nakedness. "I know you got loads of questions, but let's just leave the details for now, okay? To be honest, I did not know what question I had during that time because everything felt so blurry. I did not know how to make things out. He looked at Tina and calmly asked, "Did you get him anything?" "He looks awful. Fetch him a glass of lemonade, will you?" Tina disappeared from the room without saying a word. The first thing I was able to gather was, "What the heck, Stephen? You? Tina? What the hell is happening here?" I know I sounded like an asshole back there, but I couldn't help it. "Shush, man. She can hear us. Be still. I will get you out." "Ha! It's Tina. She's gone completely nuts. Somehow she tracked all my drug dealings. She said if I don't help her out into catching you, she's going to inform the cops about me. She even threatened to kill off my entire family. You really don't know her, man. She's a quite popular bitch in the deep web and has a lot of henchmen as well." Stephen was attempting to untie me by taking off the tape first. Fuck. This shit is completely jammed. How am I supposed to untie this? "Rebecca? Did you know that she was going to kill her?" "No. Actually, she informed me that right after killing her and instructed me to inform you of her death in the morning, that's all. She said she just wanted to see how you would react to Rebecca's death." "I'm sorry, she's playing with all of us. She took away my phone and even got her men spying on me. I wish I could help." He whelped a bit. Both of us knew well enough that this wasn't his fault. He was just another victim like me. "I will get you out and then you can call the cops or your sister before it's too late." Then suddenly the door cracked open and before we could realize anything, Tina darted in towards us. "Steve. Behind yo." He just managed to glance back before Tina jammed an axe right across his face. He fell with a loud thud in front of where I was tied up. "No. Steve." Stephen's body was twitching as it struggled to live. Blood was gashing out of his face in fountains of red as the last bit of life coughed out of him and his body finally settled, completely lifeless. Tina stared with sheer excitement at this ghastly sight, with her body shaking as her breathing grew. Her eyes were popping red while a sinister smile developed across her face. I couldn't bear the horror, the pain I felt during that moment. This bitch just killed one of my closest friends who only wanted to have us rescued, and she was enjoying every bit of her monstrous moments. I crudely felt my last chance of escaping from this hell was gradually slipping away. Then she sluggishly turned her head towards me like the way a zombie would do when they get to sense its prey isn't far away, and gave off a dry chuckle. "Do you want to have your lemonade now or later, darling? Better have it now before it turns bitter." I once watched a J-horror movie while sleeping over at Paul's place. Paul was my childhood friend and both of us were devotees of the horror genre, and it felt like we were going to live the rest of our lives praising and thrilling upon the horror and gore the genre offered us. He said he recently started watching Asian horrors and had watched the original version of The Ring and The Grudge and found them to be way scarier than their American remakes. That night he suggested the movie titled Audition. I was zealous as I never got to taste the essence of horror movies outside the US. The movie depicted the psycho woman inflicting revenge upon all her lovers by paralyzing them with a drug and then cutting off their feet, tongue, and ears. It wasn't the best of the horrors we had watched, but I must confess that the movie left us with a bitter feeling to our bile. The woman there was undoubtedly delusional and crazy. Tina, however, was at a totally new level into illustrating the true definition of being a psycho. Right then I realized what mistake I was making upon trying to interpret her lunacy. All the tension and pressure got all my logic and senses messed up. I would like to take back what I claimed before. She definitely wasn't a victim of BPD. She's a fucking psycho. One who doesn't follow any principle. one who refuses to be defeated, one who has lost everything that makes her human, a fucking psycho of pure evil. So tell me, do you want your lemonade now? I stared at her with a blank look, clearly feeling my blood washing away from my face. If I say yes, is she going to poison me with it? Or if I say no, is she going to get upset and get her chainsaw running? I imagine myself being in part of a game where you need to mentally manipulate the other in order to win, a game of mentality among psychology majoring people. Already two had fallen, Rebecca and Stephen. I was the only one standing, the only one against a psychopath capable of doing anything. It seemed like no matter what tricks I planned to pull, she already had an advantage, with her vigilance slowing, creeping towards my utter doom. If only I could reach my phone. Lord, please show me a way, please. No matter how hard I tried, my glance always managed to set its way towards Stephen's pitiful corpse. His grotesque remain laid there motionless in a puddle of his own blood, his eyes gorging out, incapable of any sight. And I am going to be her next prey. Now, here is a question for my readers. Before I proceed with my tale, what would you have done if you were all tied up by your psychotic ex-girlfriend who wouldn't feel the least bit of remorse into slashing you up with a chainsaw? Do let me know in the comments below. Do you want it or not? She scorned at me bitterly. I looked at Tina, feeling completely clueless regarding what I should answer. Fearing that the denial of her offer might end up being torn in parts, I replied faintly, "Yes, if you don't mind." Tina giggled. "Now that's a good boy, you just wait up, it's almost ready." The next moment she daintily darted away from the room. Why the hell does she even require so much time only to make a glass of lemonade? Is she planning to poison me with it? For some reason at that moment, I started to suspect whether Tina was purposefully delaying my execution. Wait, does this mean she still got feelings for me? If she does, it means I still got a chance if I'm able to manipulate her, somehow. Tina appeared with a glass filled with lemonade. The lemonade appeared unnaturally yellow. "Here you go, handsome, have it, it's fresh." I remained silent. Silly me, you can't even move. I should rather feed it to you. She held the glass to the tip of my lips. The glass of lemonade had a foul odor of ammonia, and I instantly knew of its true contents, but before I could even move my head, Tina held my head and thrust the glass against my lips, which made her so-called lemonade gush into my mouth. Although most of the liquid managed to spill out of my mouth, some still managed to sneak into my throat. I couldn't take it anymore. I coughed, my throat cringed, my head hurt. I take back what I thought before. Tina isn't planning to kill me straight away. She wants to play with me, make me her play doll, amuse herself while seeing me suffer, and then kill me. Damn. 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 If only I could reach my phone. Fuck everything. After the glass emptied away, she nonchalantly threw it away, not. Eyeing at me, she smiled and said softly, "What's wrong, Johnny? You always used to enjoy licking me down there, so what's wrong now when I give you its drink? You sick fucking psychopath." She continued, "You know I am disappointed at you. You must have forgotten how I used to taste like after you went for that bitch. So how does she taste like?" "Good." I gulped, not caring as the remaining droplets of her excrement went flowing into my throat. I whelped. "You disappoint me. You know I made that user ID of mine in that matchmaking forum in such a way that you would know that it's me." I blinked dumbly. Sassy_gone_hot 191998. I used to be sassy, but I sexualized myself for your sake, and the 9th of January in 1998 is my birthday, and you even overlooked that. Drops of tears oozed out of her eyes as they flowed down her cheeks. I bet $1 million that no rational human being would have been able to guess that. I was the one who sent you all the emails requesting you to join that site in the deep web, and you, being a perverted asshole and a cheater, fell right into my trap, and now I got you right where I want you, and it perfectly shows that there is still justice in this world. Don't you think so? My head whirled. My body felt numb from the tightness of the ropes. Beads of sweat continued to flow down my head as I knew my time was ticking away mercilessly unless I managed to come up with something. I peered once more at the lifeless body of Stephen sorrowfully, knowing that there was nothing I could do to mend what my ex-girlfriend had done. I am sorry, Stephen. I am sorry, Rebecca. I am sorry, you guys. It's all my fault that you two got to end up like this. Tina looked away to her computer screen. The live stream event was still continuing, and it was quite apparent that the viewers were finding the entire thing of a psychotic girl abusing her ex-boyfriend amusing. Tina loudly read out one of the suggestions of executing me. Suck out his blood, like the way he sucked out yours. Ah, that's it. That's the one. Thank you so much for your suggestion. Let's see, your name is Krugersaxo. Thank you, dear. Hugs and kisses for you too. Love you all. She turned towards me. That's a fantastic suggestion. Don't you think so, sweetie? She edged towards me and continued, that way you were going to feel exactly like the way I felt when you ditched me, sucking away my blood, and you were going to die, slowly and surely, 'cause the slower your death, the more painful it is going to be. Tina brought out a large syringe and presented it to me. This is what I am going to use to end my misery and perhaps even yours. In a way, she was right, because right at that moment, I felt the most miserable than I had ever felt in my entire life. She pulled out the cap of the syringe and looked at the needle intently with darkness in her gaze. Then the next instant she jammed the needle deeply straight into my right shoulder. I cried out. I wasn't anticipating such ruthless, but it was quite evident because Tina was determined to make my death as painful as possible, and she had finally gone into her works. I stared in horror as she pulled away the syringe as roughly as she had inserted it. The syringe was filled with crimson blood, my blood. I gasped for my breath as I felt nauseated once more. Tina closely observed the syringe while slowly rolling it in her palm. I couldn't tell what she was thinking, but the next instant made it obvious. She plucked open the needle head and pressed the plunger while holding the syringe. Droplets of the blood spilled out from the corners of her lips as she gulped. This can't be happening. It tastes a bit funny. Got a strange smell, but a lot better than that thing. I cringed. She wasn't normal for sure, but as time passed, her insanity galloped up to a whole level, and I was the witness and her prey to all her madness. She fixed the needle head in once more and swiftly made her second blow, this time at the bottom corner of the left side of my neck. It felt as if I was going to die. The sting burned. I swallowed a mouthful of air thinking that it might help, but it was of no use. The pain remained real. Oh, poor Johnny. Does it really hurt that much? You still don't know how painful it was for me when you ditched for that fucking hole. I pressed my eyes, trying to focus regarding what I can do to make Tina delay her next blow, because she seemed to be in a rhythm of displaying her sadism even further. I wasn't allowing my time, as the next thing she did was to my hair, and upon tilting my head backwards, she jammed her third blow right above my collarbone. I no longer could realize how that blow felt, because my neck was now stinging like hell. You promised that we would get married once we had graduated, but it seems you are the one to break the promise. Tina cried out. It was true. I once mentioned to her that we would get married once we get to graduate, but it seemed like this promise was never going to be kept, not if Tina wished to marry a corpse instead. And you also promised that we would have lots of children. Okay, she has turned fucking crazy because I don't remember making this promise. This was quite apparent that Tina was no longer able to differentiate between truths and lies, and perhaps I could use it to somehow buy my freedom. Can I manipulate her somehow? Ouch, my entire neck hurts. Just then, my phone rang. I jolted. Tina seemed confused. I looked at her wall clock. It was past dinner time. Perhaps it was Mom or Regina checking up on me, this I initially thought. I tried to wiggle, but Tina, obviously being the one with her hands free, bent down to pull the phone out of my pocket. She looked at it and smiled. Oh, look who's calling. It's your hot sister. I bet she can't wait to fuck you. I remained silent. Then Tina did something for which I will always be thankful towards her for the rest of my life. She hung up on the call and turned the phone off. For all the things I mentioned to Tina in courtesy of her principle of transparency, one of the things I never got to disclose to her was the bug in my phone. The tracking bug. Yes. I squealed in silence. My ecstasy was short-lived as Tina threw away my phone, which gave off a cracking noise as it hit the floor, in the process, cracking away a portion of my heart as well. You bitch. That costed me $749.99. Finally, a ray of hope glinted its way as I could finally visualize that my raspy sister was on her way to save me. Unless she was busy at something and forgets all about me. Oh God, please don't let that happen. Tina made her fourth blow. I let out a loud shriek, no longer being able to bear the pain. By the time Regina makes it, I think I would be lying dead by then. I don't remember it exactly, but I think she might have managed to plant a total of 20 or even 30 strikes on the top of my shoulder and neck. I don't know, I lost my count back there. All I remember is that all those assaults made my head almost motionless with excruciating stings and shrieks all over. Then there was a loud bang from the main door. The police. Tina appeared confused as she dashed away from the room. She did not stay out long, as few seconds later she sprinted into the room and locked the door. It's the cops. How the fuck do they know? Tina began to scurry across the room, feeling totally dazed over what was needed to be done next. There was a loud thud, and I knew for sure the cops had entered the house. Then Tina came up with a nasty plan. She went to her bed and picked up a large kitchen knife among all her equipment lying there. Then there was a loud knock at the door. It's the police, open up. My heart skipped upon hearing that all-so-familiar voice. It was my sister. My sister hated waiting, so finding that there was no response from the other side, she kicked relentlessly to open up the door. Tina edged towards me and slowly placed a knife right over my neck as I continued to be baffled by her insane level of audacity. Even after all this, she still refuses to accept defeat. The door broke open and my sister skipped in with Jason watching her back. There was a moment of pause as my sister and her husband shockingly tried to make out the entire situation. There was I completely tied up next to my psychotic ex-girlfriend, Tina, standing there completely naked with a knife over my neck, and finally, there was the bloody corpse of my once college chap, Stephen, lying next to our feet. That moment of pause was all Tina needed as she shrieked out, "Make one move and I am going to cut his head off." My sister just intently pointed the gun at her without even drawing the slightest of breaths. Jason gestured at me to remain calm and I tensely obeyed him. I observed that Tina's hand was shaking as it appeared as if the knife would slip from her hand any moment. My sister hated waiting and she proved it once more. There was a gunshot. The knife fell along with Tina. My sister cried out, "Jason, quick!" Jason sprinted to Tina and held her arms. She wasn't bleeding. I then realized that my sister might have intentionally missed the gunshot just to surprise Tina to drop the knife. My sister rushed towards me. I managed to blurt out, "Reg, I am." Before my sister scorned, "We'll talk at the station." Then she noticed the needle marks on my neck and screamed, "Jason, we need to take John to the hospital, right now." Having finally freed from my hostage, I was escorted to the police car. By then other police cars arrived along with representatives from the forensic department, who dashed into the apartment, most likely to investigate the body of Stephen. On our way to the hospital, my sister did not speak a single word to me. For some strange reason I felt awfully guilty during that time. I wanted to cover up the fact that Stephen was into drug dealing, but I wanted to come clean, so I let out all I had experienced. All the time during my interrogation, my sister just stared at me without any expression. This was the first time I was seeing my sister like this, which further loaded my baggage of guilt. At first Tina was arrested, but then she got admitted to a mental asylum. I dared not to ask about her as I feared that it would infuriate my sister even further. For a few days my sister remained silent, not wishing to talk to anyone except for Jason. At the dinner table she swiftly used to swallow up her food without uttering a single word. I was beginning to get worried. Shortly afterwards, an old couple paid us a visit. To our surprise, it was Tina's parents. To my dismay, the two begged for forgiveness on behalf of Tina. The two turned out to be neuroscientists. From them we got to learn that for the last 1 year they had no contact with Tina. They claimed that she was once a natural genius excelling in her studies, but along with it she had always been delusional and was on psychotic drugs. Then right at the time she turned 18, she moved out, and from then on they never had any form of contact with her. They believed that Tina might have stopped taking her medicines, which ultimately resulted in her present condition. My sister's silent treatment towards me continued for some time, then it wore off. A few days ago my sister barged into my room and handed me a new cell phone. "It's bugged like the last one," she said softly. "I am glad it is." I murmured to myself, "Hey Squirt, there is something I have been wanting to you, but I really don't know how to even start." "What is it?" I asked, feeling bewildered. You see, Tina's parents, you know they are neuroscientists, but the thing is they once developed a drug for which they needed an approval in order to test it. But unfortunately, that request was turned down, but never got to stop at that point. They started to do neuro experiments on Tina back when she was small and on other small children without any license. Initially, the symptoms were harmless, but they noticed that she was beginning to turn delusional, so they stopped their experiments. But we all know that the effect of that experiment never got to end, even to this day. I remained silent, not knowing what to utter. "Just to let you know, we just got them arrested." Before I end my narrative, I want to state that recently I somehow paid Tina a visit at the mental asylum. Our meetup was a silent one. She has thinned down a lot and appeared like a drying stick. The nurses informed me that her mental condition was dwindling, and they suspected that it was edging towards the worst. They claimed that she had now grown schizophrenic and would occasionally get seizures and sometimes would throw tantrums. I sat in front of her as she looked blankly at me. Her eyes glittered with tears as her lips parted, urging to speak to me. I had seen this face of hers before. The first night we made love, I told her, "Don't worry, once we graduate, we are going to get married and have an awesome family." That time Tina gazed at me with tears filling her eyes. Her lips parted, but words were not spilling out. That was the gaze of love and hope, whereas this was the gaze signifying sorrow and despair. Tina must have dreams of living a normal life like all of us. Caught up in the web of human greed, selfishness, and jealousy plunged her to become what she never wanted to be, perhaps. She could have had a life like you and me, but got to lose herself while searching for means to feel accepted, loved, respected, and heard. I am sorry, Tina.